Denise Carter's mop clattered to the floor. Her eyes locked onto the billionaire's fingernails. Yellow, not jaundice yellow, thallium yellow. "Oh my God," she breathed. "They're killing him right in front of everyone." 20 of America's finest doctors stood 10 feet away arguing about autoimmune disorders and liver failure. Not one of them smelled the metallic poison in the air. Not one of them recognized the distinctive pattern of hair scattered across Victor Sterling's silk pillowcase. Not one of them understood why a 67-year-old tech genius was dying in a $4 million hospital suite. But Denise understood. The woman they paid $11 an hour to mop floors understood what Harvard Medical School couldn't see. The question wasn't whether she was right. 15 years of secret study told her she was right. The question was brutal and simple. Who would believe a black maid when 20 specialists had failed? Who would listen to a housekeeper when billion-dollar reputations hung in the balance? Before we continue this incredible story, if you love tales of underdogs who rise against impossible odds, hit that subscribe button and follow Denise's journey to the very end. Drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. Let us see how far this story of courage and justice travels across the world. Now let me tell you how an invisible woman saved a billionaire's life and exposed a perfect murder. The night everything changed began like every other night for the past 6 years. Denise Carter swiped her employee badge at 10:47 p.m., 13 minutes early, always 13 minutes early. The Manhattan Medical Center's basement entrance swallowed her into fluorescent light and the smell of industrial disinfectant. Ramon looked up from his security desk. "Denise, you hear the news." "What news?" "VIP wing's going crazy. Some billionaire's dying up there. Tech guy. Sterling something." "Victor Sterling." Ramon's eyebrows shot up. "You know him?" "I know of him. Everybody knows of him. He's worth $12 billion. "Well, $12 billion can't buy him an answer. 20 doctors up there scratching their heads. Nobody knows what's killing him." Denise grabbed her time card and punched in. The machine stamped 10:47 p.m. in red ink. 20 doctors, huh? Best in the country, they're saying. Flying in specialists from everywhere. Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic, Johns Hopkins. And nobody can figure it out. Ramon shrugged. "Rich people problems, right? At least when we get sick, we know we can't afford the cure. This guy can afford anything and still can't get better." Denise didn't laugh. Something about the situation nagged at her. 20 specialists, mysterious symptoms, no diagnosis. "Which room?" she asked. 714. "But don't get any ideas. VIP wing's locked down tight. They don't want nobody up there who doesn't belong." "I belong everywhere they need floors mopped," Ramon. She pushed her cleaning cart toward the service elevator. The wheels squeaked against linoleum, announcing her presence to anyone who cared to notice. Nobody ever noticed. The elevator doors opened on the 7th floor to barely controlled chaos. 3 doctors huddled near the nurses' station, voices sharp with frustration. A woman in surgical scrubs rushed past carrying a tablet, her face tight with worry. Somewhere down the hall, a machine beeped in urgent rhythm. Denise steered her cart toward her assigned rooms. 702 through 715. Clean stock, sanitize, repeat. 8 hours of invisible labor while the visible people saved lives around her, or failed to save them. "Excuse me?" The voice stopped her cold, deep, authoritative, the kind of voice that had never once been ignored. Denise turned. A tall man blocked her path. Silver hair swept back from a high forehead. Wire-rimmed glasses perched on an aristocratic nose. White coat pristine as if illness itself wouldn't dare stain it. "Yes, sir. The patient in 714 requires absolute rest. No cleaning staff until further notice." "Yes, doctor. I'll skip that room tonight." He didn't acknowledge her response. Simply turned and walked away, already pulling out his phone, already moving on to matters more important than a housekeeper's compliance. Denise watched him go. She'd seen his type 1,000 times. Men who saved lives and knew their own worth down to the decimal point. Men who looked through people like her as if they were made of glass. She redirected to room 712. Empty, waiting for its next wealthy patient. The bathroom mirror needed attention. Denise sprayed, wiped, sprayed again. Her reflection stared back at her. 38 years old. Tired eyes, capable hands, a mind that nobody knew existed. Voices drifted through the wall, close, urgent. "His liver function's dropping faster than we projected." A woman's voice, strained. "We've ruled out everything, Jennifer. Hepatitis negative, Wilson's disease negative, hemochromatosis negative. The autoimmune panel came back clean." A man's voice, the same man who'd dismissed her in the hallway. "Then what are we missing, Theodore? Because something is destroying this man's body and we're standing here like first-year residents." "I'm aware of our failure, thank you." 20 of us, Theodore. 20 of the best diagnostic minds in American medicine, and we're no closer to an answer than we were 2 weeks ago. Silence. Heavy. Damning. What about environmental factors? The woman pressed. Something in his home, his office, something he's being exposed to regularly. We've tested everything. His penthouse has been swept twice, his office 3 times. Water, air, food, personal products. Everything comes back clean. Then the exposure is happening here. In my hospital, that's absurd. Is it? He's been here for 17 days and he's gotten progressively worse. What if the poison is coming from inside these walls? Denise's hand froze on the mirror. Poison. The woman had said poison. Jennifer, you're reaching. There's no evidence of anything, Theodore. That's the problem. We're treating symptoms because we can't find a cause, and while we chase our tails, Victor Sterling is dying. Footsteps, a door opening and closing. The conversation ended. Denise stood motionless in the empty bathroom, her mind racing. Poison. The word echoed in her skull like a bell. 20 doctors couldn't find the cause. But what if they were looking in the wrong direction? What if they were searching for disease when they should have been searching for murder? She finished room 712 mechanically, wiped surfaces, restocked supplies, checked the toilet paper roll. Mundane tasks while her brain worked the problem, like an equation. What would cause progressive organ failure that looked like disease but wasn't? Denise had asked herself questions like this before. Late nights in her apartment, reading toxicology journals she'd borrowed from the public library. Early mornings before the kids woke up watching online lectures from professors who would never know she existed. She'd never stopped learning. Even when Columbia University became a memory. Even when scholarship dreams dissolved into mop buckets and minimum wage. The knowledge stayed with her, growing in the dark like a plant that refused to die. Her cart squeaked down the hallway. Room 713. Clean. Room 714. Skip per doctor's orders. But as she passed 714's door, she slowed. The door was slightly ajar. Through the gap, she could see monitors, blinking IV bags, hanging machines, doing the work that a human body had forgotten how to do. Just a peek, she told herself. Just to see what 20 doctors can't figure out. She checked both directions. The hallway was empty, the nurses' station temporarily abandoned. Denise pushed the door open and slipped inside. The room didn't look like any hospital room she'd ever cleaned. Mahogany panels hid the medical equipment. Soft lighting replaced harsh fluorescence. Fresh orchids sat in crystal vases. The bed linens probably cost more than her monthly rent. And in the center of it all, wired to machines that beeped and hummed, lay Victor Sterling. Denise had seen his face on magazine covers. Time named him Person of the Year in 2019. Forbes put him on their Billionaire list every year since 2008. He'd revolutionized cloud computing, changed how the world stored information, made enemies of every competitor in Silicon Valley. Now he looked like death waiting to happen. His skin had a grayish pallor that expensive lighting couldn't hide. His hair, silver and thick in photographs, had thinned dramatically. Patches of bare scalp showed through like a lawn ravaged by disease. And his hands. Denise moved closer. She couldn't help herself. Something about those hands pulled her forward like a magnet. His fingernails. Yellow. Not the yellow of jaundice, which spread from the edges inward. This yellow started at the nail bed and spread outward toward the tips. A specific pattern. A distinctive marker. Where had she seen this before? Her memory rifled through years of stolen education, late-night reading sessions, downloaded lectures, dog-eared library books. Professor Chen. Columbia University. 15 years ago. Heavy metal poisoning is the great mimicker. It can present as autoimmune disease, liver failure, neurological disorder. Unless you know exactly what to look for, you will miss it every time. Heavy metal poisoning. Denise's breath caught. What are you doing in here? She spun around. A nurse stood in the doorway, young face hard with suspicion. Just checking if the room needed cleaning, ma'am. At 11:30 at night, in a room you were specifically told to skip? I must have forgotten, ma'am. I'm sorry. I'll leave right now. The nurse's eyes narrowed. See that you do, and don't come back unless you're called. Denise retreated, heart-pounding, mind racing. She grabbed her cart and pushed it down the hallway, fighting to keep her pace normal. Yellow fingernails starting at the base. Distinctive hair loss pattern. Progressive organ failure that mimicked a dozen different diseases. She knew what was killing Victor Sterling. She just needed to prove it. The basement cafeteria at 1 a.m. was a tomb. Vending machines hummed against walls painted institutional green. Empty tables stretched toward empty chairs. The smell of old coffee hung in the recycled air. Denise sat alone, phone in hand, heart hammering against her ribs. She typed yellow fingernails, base heavy metal. The results loaded slowly on the hospital's weak Wi-Fi. Arsenic, lead, mercury, thallium. She clicked the link. Thallium poisoning presents with progressive peripheral neuropathy, alopecia, and gastrointestinal disturbance. Early signs include Meese lines on fingernails and distinctive discoloration beginning at the nail bed. Often misdiagnosed as Guillain-Barré syndrome, autoimmune hepatitis, or systemic lupus. Called the poisoner's poison due to its colorless, odorless properties and difficulty of detection. Denise read the passage 3 times. Progressive peripheral neuropathy. Sterling's medical chart probably showed nerve damage in his extremities. Alopecia. His hair was falling out in clumps. Gastrointestinal disturbance. He'd likely complained of stomach pain and nausea. And the fingernails. The distinctive yellow discoloration starting at the base. Textbook? Perfect. Unmistakable. Victor Sterling wasn't dying of mysterious disease. Victor Sterling was being murdered. Slowly. Deliberately. Right under the noses of 20 brilliant doctors who were too focused on medical causes to consider criminal ones. Denise's hands trembled as she put down her phone. Who would want to kill a man worth $12 billion, and more importantly, who would believe her when she told them she was a housekeeper? A high school graduate with some college credits that meant nothing on paper. An invisible woman who cleaned toilets and emptied trash and mopped floors while important people did important work around her. Dr. Theodore Harrison would laugh her out of his office, but Victor Sterling would die. Tomorrow, next week, whenever the poison finished its work. He would die and nobody would ever know it was murder. Unless she did something. Denise thought about her children. Marcus 12, dreaming of basketball scholarships. Jasmine 14, already talking about college like it was her birthright. They needed her paycheck. They needed her health insurance. They needed stability. She thought about her apartment. Rent due in 2 weeks. Electricity bill sitting on the kitchen counter. The slow leak in the bathroom that she couldn't afford to fix. She thought about what would happen if she was wrong. If she accused someone of murder based on yellow fingernails and a half-remembered toxicology lecture. She'd be fired. Blacklisted. Unhireable. But she wasn't wrong. She knew she wasn't wrong. The question was whether knowing was enough. Whether being right mattered when nobody would listen. Denise finished her break and returned to work. Her shift lasted until 6 a.m. 7 more hours of cleaning rooms and emptying trash and being invisible. 7 more hours to figure out what to do. At 2:15 a.m., Denise positioned herself outside the 7th floor nurses' station. She'd discovered months ago that this particular stretch of hallway had excellent acoustics. Conversations carried. Secrets traveled. She pretended to polish a handrail while 2 nurses traded information. Sterling's neurosymptoms are getting worse, the first nurse said. He can't feel his feet anymore, says they're burning all the time. Ascending neuropathy. That's what Harrison thinks. Classic autoimmune presentation. But the autoimmune panels are negative. Everything's negative. That's the problem. 20 specialists and the best they can come up with is atypical presentation of unknown etiology. Meanwhile, the man's dying. Denise polished the same spot on the handrail for the 3rd time. Ascending peripheral neuropathy, one of the hallmark symptoms of thallium poisoning. The damage started in the feet and hands, then crept upward toward the core. Burning sensations, numbness, eventually paralysis. What about the friend who keeps visiting? The second nurse asked. Webb something? Marcus Webb. Tech billionaire. Used to be Sterling's biggest rival before they made peace. Now he's here every single day bringing gifts sitting by the bed. It's actually kind of sweet. What kind of gifts? Hand cream mostly, some expensive Swiss brand. Sterling's skin gets irritated by the hospital products, so Webb brings his own. Applies it himself even. Very devoted. Denise's hand stopped mid-polish. Hand cream, applied daily. By a man who used to be Sterling's enemy. The delivery mechanism. Thallium could be absorbed through the skin. Mixed into a cream or lotion applied regularly, it would enter the bloodstream slowly and steadily, building up in tissues, causing progressive damage. Mimicking 100 different diseases while the real cause remained invisible. And who would suspect a devoted friend bringing comfort gifts perfect? It was perfect. Denise abandoned her handrail and walked toward room 714. She needed to see that hand cream. Needed to confirm her suspicion. But a security guard stood outside Sterling's door now, arms crossed, face blank, unmovable. "Can I help you?" he asked as she approached. "Just checking if the room needs cleaning." "It doesn't. Move along." Denise moved along. but her mind stayed behind calculating probabilities, building theories, constructing the case that nobody wanted to hear. Marcus Webb was murdering Victor Sterling. Slowly, publicly, in a hospital surrounded by doctors, and nobody suspected a thing. At 3 a.m., room 714's door opened. Dr. Theodore Harrison emerged, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His silver hair was disheveled. His pristine white coat was wrinkled. The confidence she'd seen earlier had cracked around the edges. Denise made her decision. "Dr. Harrison." He looked up, startled. For a moment his eyes passed through her like she wasn't there. Then they focused and irritation replaced confusion. "Yes, what is it?" "I need to speak with you about Mr. Sterling." "Shri, are you medical staff?" "No, sir. Environmental services, but I..." "Then I don't have time for this." He started to walk away. "Have you tested for thallium?" Harrison stopped, turned slowly. His expression shifted through several emotions: surprise, confusion, suspicion. "What did you say, thallium poisoning?" "The symptoms match. Ascending peripheral neuropathy, progressive alopecia, gastrointestinal distress, the fingernail discoloration." "You've seen his fingernails." Denise didn't flinch. "I've seen enough to know what's killing him, and I don't think you've tested for it specifically." Harrison stared at her. Really stared, perhaps for the first time since she'd worked in his hospital. "Who are you?" "Denise Carter. I clean your floors. And I studied chemistry at Columbia before life got in the way." Chemistry. He said it like the word tasted strange. "And you think you've diagnosed what 20 specialists couldn't. I think you've been looking for disease when you should be looking for poison. Thallium is odorless and colorless. It absorbs through the skin. Standard heavy metal panels often miss it unless you're specifically testing for it. We ran heavy metal screens." "Did you run them for thallium specifically at detection thresholds low enough to catch gradual exposure?" Harrison's jaw tightened. "Miss Carter, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but Mr. Sterling's case is being handled by the finest diagnostic minds in the country. The finest diagnostic minds are watching a man die because they won't consider murder." The word hung between them. Murder, ugly, impossible. True. "That's a very serious accusation." "Yes, it is. Based on what fingernail color and some undergraduate chemistry, based on symptom presentation that matches thallium toxicity exactly, based on a delivery mechanism that's been entering his room every single day, based on the fact that you've tested for everything except the one thing that fits." Harrison's face reddened. "The delivery mechanism? What delivery mechanism?" "The hand cream, the Swiss import that Marcus Webb brings every day, the one he applies to Sterling's skin himself." Silence. Long. Heavy. "You're suggesting that Marcus Webb, Victor Sterling's close friend and fellow billionaire, is slowly poisoning him with hand cream. I'm suggesting you test the cream for thallium and find out." Harrison stepped closer. His voice dropped to a whisper that felt like a threat. "Listen to me very carefully, Miss Carter. You are a housekeeper. Your job is to clean rooms, not diagnose patients. If I hear that you've been spreading these accusations to anyone else, I will have you terminated immediately. Do you understand?" Denise met his eyes. "I understand that Victor Sterling is dying. I understand that I know why, and I understand that you're too proud to listen to a woman who mops your floors. Good night, Miss Carter." He walked away without looking back. Denise stood in the empty hallway, shame and fury burning in equal measure. She'd tried. She'd actually tried to save a man's life, and she'd been dismissed like a child interrupting adult conversation, because she was invisible, because her uniform defined her, because the gap between what she knew and what she was allowed to know couldn't be bridged by evidence or logic or desperation. But Victor Sterling was still dying, and she was the only one who knew why. The bus home at 6:30 a.m. was nearly empty. Denise sat in the back watching Manhattan wake up. Through grimy windows, office workers heading to early shifts, students trudging toward schools, a city of 8 million people, each one invisible to the others. Her phone buzzed. Text from Jasmine. "Mom, can you sign my permission slip when you get home? Field trip tomorrow. Normal life, normal problems. A daughter who needed signatures, and a son who needed breakfast, and a mother who needed sleep she wouldn't get." Denise typed back, "Be home in 20 minutes, baby." 20 minutes. Then her other life would resume. The life where she wasn't a chemist who discovered a murder. The life where she was just mom. Her apartment building hunched on 125th Street like it was tired of standing. She climbed 3 flights of stairs because the elevator had been broken since March. Her keys rattled in the lock. Inside, Marcus was already awake eating cereal in front of the TV. 12 years old and growing so fast she could almost watch it happen. "Hey, Mom." "Hey, baby, you're up early." "Couldn't sleep. Too excited about the basketball tryouts today." "Tryouts are today." "I told you last week." Had he, the days blurred together when you worked nights. "Right. Of course, you're going to do great." Marcus grinned, and for a moment, Denise forgot about thallium and billionaires and doctors who wouldn't listen. For a moment, she was just a mother looking at her son. Then Jasmine emerged from the bedroom, permission slip in hand, and real life reasserted itself. "Mom, I need this signed before 7:30. "Let me see it." "Natural History Museum, educational field trip, $45. "Where's the money supposed to come from, Jazz?" "You said you'd pay for it last week." Had she? The days blurred together. Denise signed the slip and pulled 2 20s and a 5 from her wallet. Money she'd budgeted for groceries. Money that would have to come from somewhere else now. "Thanks, Mom. You're the best." Jasmine disappeared back into the bedroom to finish getting ready. Marcus put his cereal bowl in the sink without being asked. Small mercies. "Mom?" Marcus paused at the kitchen door. "You look really tired." "I'm fine, baby." "You're always tired." "That's what working nights does." "Why don't you get a day job? Then you could sleep like normal people." Because day jobs at hospitals required credentials she didn't have. Because the night shift paid $1 more per hour. Because someone had to be home when the kids got back from school. "Someday, she said. "Someday I'll get a normal schedule." Marcus nodded, accepting the lie the way children accept their parents' limitations. After the kids left for school, Denise sat at the kitchen table and stared at the wall. She should sleep. Her body screamed for rest. 8 hours on her feet, then the confrontation with Harrison, then the bus ride home. She was running on fumes and anxiety. But her mind wouldn't stop. Thallium, hand cream, Marcus Webb, murder. She pulled out her phone and searched Marcus Webb-Victor Sterling rivalry. Articles loaded, dozens of them. The 2 tech titans had feuded publicly for nearly a decade. Lawsuits, counter-lawsuits, accusations of stolen patents and corporate espionage. Sterling had nearly destroyed Webb's company in 2019 with a hostile takeover attempt. Then 18 months ago, they'd announced a reconciliation. Joint charity events. Golf games. Public displays of friendship. Everyone called it a beautiful example of putting business aside for personal connection. Denise called it a perfect cover for revenge. She searched further Marcus Webb-Sterling Technologies merger. The results made her breath catch. Sterling Technologies was in merger talks with a European conglomerate, a deal worth $34 billion. But the deal required Victor Sterling's personal approval, his signature on papers that would transfer control of his life's work. If Sterling died before signing the merger, would collapse, and Marcus Webb's company would absorb Sterling Technologies' market share. Motive, means, opportunity. It was all that is all there. Documented in financial news and business journals and corporate filings. Everything she needed to prove murder. Except she was a housekeeper, and nobody would listen. Denise didn't sleep. Couldn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table for 4 hours building a case from internet searches and her own observations. The symptoms matched thallium poisoning exactly. The delivery mechanism was the hand cream. The motive was billions of dollars and old revenge. The murderer was visiting every day playing the devoted friend while feeding his victim poison. At 2 p.m., Denise made a decision. If Dr. Harrison wouldn't listen to her directly, she'd force him to listen indirectly. She found a clean sheet of paper, wrote in careful block letters, "Check for thallium poisoning, progressive ascending neuropathy, alopecia, GE distress, fingernail discoloration, exposure through skin contact, test the hand cream, the symptoms are textbook. No signature, no identification, just facts." She would leave it where Harrison would find it, under his office door, on his desk, somewhere he couldn't ignore. And when he tested for thallium and found it, he wouldn't care who had tipped him off. Victor Sterling would be saved. Justice would be served. The invisible woman would stay invisible, and that was fine. That was fine. Denise arrived at the hospital at 9 p.m. an hour before her shift. She'd learned long ago that early arrivals attracted less attention than late ones. The 7th floor was quiet. Visiting hours had ended. Most of the specialists had gone home to their families and their lives. Only the night staff remained, plus whatever doctors were on call. Harrison's office was on the 4th floor, administrative wing. Empty at this hour. Denise took the stairs, avoided the elevator, kept her head down. The administrative wing stretched silent and dark. Emergency lighting cast long shadows across industrial carpet. Harrison's office was the 3rd door on the right. She knelt and slid the paper under the door, watched it disappear into darkness. Done. Now she would wait. Now she would hope. She returned to the 7th floor and started her shift. Rooms 702 through 715. Clean, stock, sanitize, repeat. But as she pushed her cart past room 714, she heard voices through the partially open door. Harrison's voice. And apparently, our cleaning staff has opinions about medicine now. Laughter. Multiple voices. Someone left an anonymous note suggesting thallium poisoning. Slipped it under my door like we're in some kind of spy movie. More laughter. Did you read it? A woman's voice. Dr. Jennifer Park. I skimmed it. Classic heavy metal conspiracy theory. Poisoned hand cream, if you can believe it. That's actually not entirely. Jennifer, we tested for heavy metals in the initial workup. Standard protocol. Standard panels don't always catch thallium, Theodore. The detection thresholds. The detection thresholds are fine. Whoever wrote this note has been watching too many crime dramas. Next, they'll suggest we check for radioactive polonium. Laughter again, louder this time. The sound of professionals mocking an amateur. Cleaning staff playing detective, Harrison continued. This is what happens when we don't properly restrict floor access. Denise stood frozen in the hallway, her anonymous note burning in Harrison's wastebasket. They weren't going to test for thallium. They weren't going to check the hand cream. They were going to laugh at her evidence and let Victor Sterling die, because she was nobody, because her knowledge didn't count, because the gap between invisible and visible couldn't be bridged by truth. Her hands tightened on the cart handle until her knuckles whitened. She had 2 choices now. Give up. Accept that some things couldn't be changed. Watch a man die and live with the knowledge for the rest of her life. Or keep fighting, louder, harder, until someone listened or she lost everything trying. Denise thought about her children. Marcus with his basketball dreams. Jasmine with her college plans. The $45 she'd given up for a museum trip. She thought about rent, electricity, health insurance. She thought about Victor Sterling wasting away in his $4 million suite while a murderer fed him poison and called it friendship. Keep fighting, she decided, even if it costs everything. The next morning, Denise didn't go home after her shift. She waited outside the hospital's main entrance watching for Dr. Jennifer Park. Park had tried to defend the anonymous note. Park had mentioned detection thresholds. Park might listen. At 7:15 a.m., Park emerged, coffee cup in hand, white coat wrinkled from a long night. Dr. Park. Park looked up surprised. Can I help you? I'm the one who wrote the note about thallium. Park stopped walking. You're the wait you're housekeeping. Denise Carter. I clean the VIP wing. And you think you know what's wrong with Sterling. I know. The symptoms are textbook. Ascending peripheral neuropathy, distinctive alopecia gastrointestinal distress, fingernail discoloration starting at the nail bed. It's thallium. I would bet my life on it. Park studied her. Really studied in a way that felt different from Harrison's dismissive stare. You said the cream, in your note. What cream? Marcus Webb brings an imported hand cream every day. Applies it himself. It's the delivery mechanism. Thallium absorbs through the skin. Why would Marcus Webb poison Victor Sterling? They were rivals for 10 years. Sterling nearly destroyed Webb's company, and there's a merger happening, $34 billion. If Sterling dies before he signs, Webb's company absorbs the market share. Park was quiet for a long moment. Her coffee steamed in the morning air. That's a serious accusation. Yes, based on symptoms you observed and some Googling. Based on toxicology knowledge from Columbia University, where I was a chemistry honors student before my parents died, and I had to drop out to support my siblings. Another silence. Longer this time. Why are you telling me this? Because you tried to defend my note. Because you mentioned detection thresholds. Because Harrison won't listen, and Sterling doesn't have much time. Park looked at Denise. Looked at the cleaning uniform, the tired eyes, the desperate determination. I can't promise anything, Park said finally. But I'll look into it. That's all I'm asking. Park nodded once and walked away. Denise watched her go, hope flickering like a candle in a windstorm. 2 days passed. Denise worked her shifts, cleaned rooms, emptied trash. Watched Victor Sterling deteriorate through glimpses and whispered conversations. His speech was slurring now. His hands shook too badly to feed himself. Nurses reported that he couldn't feel anything below his knees. And Marcus Webb visited every single day, always with a fresh jar of that expensive hand cream. "It's the only brand he'll use," Webb told anyone who would listen. "His skin is so sensitive. This is the only thing that doesn't irritate him." Denise watched from the hallway as Webb smoothed the cream onto Sterling's trembling hands. So caring, so devoted, so perfectly murderous. On the third day, security found her. "Miss Carter." She turned. Philip's head of hospital security blocked her path. Thick neck, small eyes. The kind of man who enjoyed having power over people who couldn't fight back. "Yes, we've received reports that you've been harassing medical staff, specifically Dr. Park. I spoke to Dr. Park once about a patient. You're not authorized to speak to doctors about patients. You're authorized to clean rooms." "I was trying to help." "You were overstepping. Significantly." Phillips moved closer. "This is your official warning. One more incident and you're terminated, immediately, and I'll make sure every hospital in Manhattan knows why. Mr. Sterling is dying. I know what's killing him. Nobody will listen." "Nobody has to listen to you, Miss Carter. That's not your job. Your job is to mop floors and empty trash. Stay in your lane or lose your position." He walked away without waiting for her response. Denise stood in the hallway, trembling with rage. Stay in your lane. Know your place. Clean the floors and shut up. She'd heard those words her whole life. From teachers who underestimated her. From bosses who overlooked her. From a world that sorted people into categories and punished anyone who tried to escape. But Victor Sterling was still dying, and she was still right. That night, Denise made another decision. If they wouldn't listen to her words, she'd give them evidence they couldn't ignore. She needed a sample of that hand cream, needed to test it, needed proof. At 2 a.m., she positioned herself near room 714. The security guard had stepped away. The nurses were at their station, distracted by paperwork. Now or never. Denise slipped into Sterling's room. The billionaire was asleep, breathing shallow and ragged. Machines beeped their steady rhythm. The ambient lighting cast everything in soft gold. And there on the nightstand sat the hand cream. Black jar, gold lettering, Swiss import. Denise pulled a sterile specimen container from her pocket. She'd taken it from the supply room earlier, planning ahead. She opened the jar. The cream inside was thick, luxurious, expensive-looking. And underneath the fragrance, barely detectable, something metallic. Her chemistry-trained nose caught it immediately. Normal skin cream didn't smell metallic. This one did. She transferred a small amount into the specimen container, sealed it, pocketed it. Done. "What are you doing?" Denise spun around. A nurse stood in the doorway. The same nurse from before, face hard with suspicion, checking if the room needed cleaning. At 2 a.m. again. "With your hand in the patient's personal items, Sweat. I was just get out now and don't come back. I'm reporting this to security." Denise left. Her heart pounded, her hands shook, but the specimen container in her pocket held the key to everything. The maintenance closet on the 3rd floor had become Denise's laboratory. She'd discovered it months ago, a forgotten space where nobody went. She worked quickly. Baking soda, aluminum foil, containers from the cafeteria. Combined with cleaning solutions, these ordinary items could perform extraordinary chemistry. The sodium rhodizonate reaction was simple. The chemical turned red in the presence of thallium ions. Denise mixed the solutions, added a tiny sample of the hand cream, waited. The liquid turned red, positive for thallium. She photographed the result, documented the procedure, created evidence that couldn't be dismissed. Victor Sterling was being murdered. She had proof. Now she just needed someone to believe her. At 3 a.m., alarms shattered the silence. Code blue. Room 714. Denise ran. The 7th floor erupted in controlled chaos. Doctors rushed past. Nurses sprinted with crash carts. Someone was shouting about liver enzymes. Through the open door of room 714, Denise saw Victor Sterling convulsing on the bed. "He's crashing," a resident yelled. "Multi-organ failure." "Push the epinephrine," Harrison commanded. "Get me a full panel stat." "We're losing him." "We are not losing him. Not on my watch." Denise watched from the hallway as 20 doctors fought to save a man they couldn't diagnose. They stabilized him, temporarily. The machines beeped steadier. The convulsions stopped. But Harrison's face told the truth. They were out of time, out of options, out of hope. Victor Sterling would die. Tomorrow, maybe tonight. And nobody would ever know it was murder, unless Denise did something Unless she walked into that room full of doctors and made them listen. She thought about security's warning, termination, blacklisting, every hospital in Manhattan. She thought about rent, electricity, health insurance, her children. She thought about Marcus Webb, who would walk away with billions while an innocent man rotted in the ground. Some things mattered more than safety. Some truths demanded to be heard. Denise straightened her uniform, grabbed her evidence, and walked toward room 714. Tomorrow, everything would change. One way or another, they were going to see her. Denise's hand trembled on the door handle of room 714. Through the glass panel, she could see 20 white coats huddled around Victor Sterling's bed. 20 brilliant minds. 20 useless opinions. She had 30 seconds before security found her. 30 seconds to change everything or lose it all. Her children's faces flashed through her mind. Marcus, Jasmine, the rent due next week, the electricity bill on the counter. Then she thought about Victor Sterling's yellow fingernails, the metallic smell of poison, the red color of her makeshift test. She pushed the door open and walked in. Mr. Sterling is being poisoned with thallium. Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade. 20 heads turned. 20 pairs of eyes found her. 20 expressions shifted from confusion to irritation. Dr. Harrison stepped forward, face darkening. Who let her in here? Security. The thallium is in his hand cream. Denise held up her phone, showing the photograph of her positive test. I tested it myself. Sodium rhodizonate reaction. The results are unmistakable. This is absurd. Harrison moved toward her. You need to leave immediately. Look at his fingernails, Dr. Harrison. Denise didn't retreat. Yellow discoloration starting at the nail bed. Classic thallium presentation. Look at his hair loss pattern. Look at the ascending neuropathy. It's textbook. Security, Harrison shouted again, but Dr. Jennifer Park stepped between them. Wait. Harrison stopped. Jennifer, this woman is a housekeeper. She has no business. She has evidence. Park turned to Denise. Show me. Denise handed over her phone. Park studied the photograph, then swiped through the documentation. Her face changed as she read. She tested the hand cream, Park said quietly. Positive for thallium. With what cleaning supplies? Harrison's voice dripped contempt. With sodium rhodizonate. Modified field test. Park looked up. It's a legitimate detection method, Theodore. Advanced toxicology, not something you learn from crime dramas. The room went silent. Dr. Williams, the toxicology specialist, moved closer. Let me see that. Park handed him the phone. Williams examined the results, his expression shifting from skepticism to interest. The color reaction is consistent with thallium presence, Williams said slowly. The concentration appears significant. This is ridiculous. Harrison's voice had lost some of its certainty. We tested for heavy metals. Standard panels? Denise said. They're calibrated to detect acute exposure. Mr. Sterling has been receiving small doses over weeks. The levels stay just below typical detection thresholds while accumulating in his tissues. Williams nodded slowly. That would explain why our panels came back negative. Chronic low-level exposure is notoriously difficult to detect without specific testing. The delivery mechanism is the hand cream, Denise continued. Marcus Webb brings it every day, applies it himself. Thallium absorbs through the skin. Marcus Webb, Harrison's face reddened. You're accusing Victor Sterling's closest friend of attempted murder. I'm telling you what the evidence shows. 2 security guards appeared in the doorway. Phillips, the head of security, pushed past them. Miss Carter, you were warned. You're terminated effective immediately. Wait. Dr. Park held up her hand. Before anyone gets fired, we should run a specific thallium assay. If she's wrong, she's wrong. But if she's right... She's a cleaning woman, Jennifer. She's a Columbia-trained chemist who noticed what we missed. Park's voice hardened. 20 of us, Theodore. 20 of the best diagnostic minds in the country. And we were ready to let this man die because we couldn't see past our own assumptions. The silence stretched. Dr. Williams cleared his throat. I can run a specific thallium test. Results in 2 hours. This is a waste of resources, Harrison protested. It's 2 hours and a blood draw. Park turned to face him directly. What's the alternative? We tell his family we let him die because testing a housekeeper's theory was beneath us. Harrison's jaw tightened. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then he nodded once. Curtly. Run the test. Phillips stepped forward. What about her? She stays, Park said. Until we have results. That's not protocol. Protocol almost killed our patient. Miss Carter, please wait outside. We'll call you when we know something. Denise walked out of the room on legs that barely held her. The security guards flanked her, but they didn't touch her. Phillips glared, but said nothing. She'd done it. She'd forced them to listen. Now everything depended on a blood test. The next 2 hours crawled past like years. Denise sat in a plastic chair outside the lab security guards stationed at both ends of the hallway. Her phone buzzed repeatedly. Jasmine asking about dinner. Marcus wanting permission for a sleepover. Normal life continuing while her fate hung in the balance. She texted back, working late, order pizza, money in the drawer. At 5:47 a.m. Der Williams emerged from the lab. His face was pale. Get Dr. Harrison, he said to the nearest nurse. Now. Denise stood. The results? Williams looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. You were right. The words hit her like a physical force. Thallium levels are 3 times the toxic threshold, Williams continued. He's been receiving sustained doses for at least 6 weeks. Another week of exposure would have killed him. Harrison arrived at a near-run park close behind. Well, Harrison demanded. Positive for thallium. Significant levels. Williams handed over the report. The housekeeper was right. We almost missed a murder. Harrison read the results. His face went through stages: denial, shock, realization, and finally something that looked almost like shame. Get the hand cream, he ordered. Test everything Webb brought into this room, and call the FBI. What about treatment? Park asked. Prussian blue, immediately. It binds to thallium and helps the body excrete it. Harrison looked up. If we'd caught this a week ago, he'd already be recovering. Another week and he'd be dead. His eyes found Denise. How, Gus? He asked. How did you see what we couldn't? I paid attention. Denise's voice was steady despite her racing heart. I learned to see patterns because nobody was watching me. I studied toxicology because I loved it even when I couldn't afford school. And I knew what thallium poisoning looked like because Professor Chen at Columbia spent 3 hours teaching us about the great mimickers. Professor Chen, Williams repeated. You studied with Robert Chen. For 1 semester, before I had to drop out. Harrison was quiet for a long moment. Something shifted in his expression. Not warmth exactly, but recognition. Miss Carter, I owe you an apology. You owe Victor Sterling an apology. I just wanted him to live. The FBI arrived at 8:15 a.m. 2 agents in dark suits' credentials displayed faces professionally blank. They commandeered a conference room and began taking statements. Denise told them everything. The fingernails, the research, the hand cream, the sodium rhodizonate test, Marcus Webb's daily visits. You ran your own chemical analysis. Agent Martinez, the lead investigator, raised an eyebrow. I used to be a chemistry student. The knowledge doesn't disappear just because you can't finish the degree. And you suspected Webb from the beginning. I suspected someone was poisoning him. The symptoms were too specific to be coincidence. Webb was the only person with regular access and a clear motive. Martinez nodded slowly. The merger. $34 billion. If Sterling dies before signing Webb's company absorbs the market share, he nearly destroyed Webb's business 5 years ago. This is revenge and profit rolled into one. That's quite a theory. It's not a theory anymore. Your lab will confirm thallium in the hand cream. Security footage will show Webb applying it, and I'm guessing if you check his financial records, you'll find some interesting purchases. Martinez studied her for a long moment. You should have been a detective. I should have been a lot of things. At 9:30 a.m., hospital security escorted Marcus Webb into a conference room for what he thought was a routine interview about his friend's condition. He never left voluntarily. Denise watched through the window as FBI agents presented him with evidence. The hand cream tested positive for thallium. Security footage showed him carefully applying it to Sterling's skin. Financial records revealed purchases of thallium compounds through shell companies. Webb's face transformed as the trap closed around him. Denial gave way to calculation, then to something cold and cornered. I want my lawyer, he said finally. You're going to need one. Martinez slapped handcuffs onto his wrists. Marcus Webb, you're under arrest for the attempted murder of Victor Sterling. Webb's eyes swept the room as agents led him away. They landed on Denise standing in the hallway. You, he said, the cleaning woman. The chemist, Denise corrected. You ruined everything. No, Mr. Webb, you ruined everything. I just noticed. They took him away. The conference room emptied, and Denise stood alone in the hallway, finally allowing herself to breathe. It was over. She'd done it. Victor Sterling was going to live. By noon, the hospital had transformed. Victor Sterling was receiving Prussian blue treatment, his vital signs already stabilizing. Doctors who had dismissed Denise 12 hours earlier now nodded at her in the hallways. Nurses stopped to congratulate her. "You saved his life," one of them said. "You actually saved a billionaire's life." "I noticed what was killing him. The doctors saved his life." "Don't sell yourself short. You did what 20 specialists couldn't." Denise didn't know how to respond to that. 15 years of invisibility hadn't prepared her for being seen. Dr. Park found her in the cafeteria at 1 p.m. staring at a cup of coffee she was too tired to drink. "You should go home," Park said, sliding into the seat across from her. "You've been here for 15 hours. "I can't go home. Security terminated me, remember?" "About that," Park smiled slightly. "Harrison talked to administration. Your termination has been reversed, with full back pay and a formal apology." Denise blinked. "Harrison did that? He's not a bad man, just a proud one. And you humiliated him in front of his entire team." Park's smile widened. "He'll get over it. The important thing is you still have a job. As a housekeeper. For now." Park leaned forward. "But I've been thinking. The hospital has a toxicology department. We could use someone with your observational skills. It wouldn't be much to start, probably just a lab assistant position, but it would be a foot in the door." Denise stared at her. "You're offering me a job, a real job." "I'm offering you an interview. What you do with it is up to you." For the first time in 15 years, Denise felt something she'd almost forgotten. Hope. At 3 p.m., Denise finally went home. She rode the bus through Manhattan, watching the city blur past. The same route she'd taken thousands of times. The same streets, the same buildings, the same people rushing to their important lives. But everything felt different now. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Hello? Miss Carter, this is Victor Sterling's assistant. Mr. Sterling would like to speak with you. Are you available?" Denise almost dropped the phone. "I'm sorry, what Mr. Sterling regained consciousness 2 hours ago." The first thing he asked was to speak with the woman who saved his life. Yes, I'm available. Can you come to the hospital tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock? I'll be there." She hung up and stared at her phone, hands trembling. Victor Sterling wanted to see her. The billionaire whose life she'd saved wanted to talk to a housekeeper from Harlem. The world had tilted on its axis, and Denise wasn't sure which way was up anymore. Her apartment door opened to the smell of pizza and the sound of video games. Normal. Beautifully, blessedly normal. "Mom?" Marcus ran to hug her. "You're home early." "I had a crazy night, baby." Jasmine looked up from her homework. "Good crazy or bad crazy?" "Both. Very much both." Denise collapsed onto the couch, with exhaustion finally catching up with her. Her children gathered around, sensing that something significant had happened. "Mom, are you okay?" Jasmine's voice carried worry. "I'm fine, baby. Better than fine." She pulled them both close. "I did something important today. Something I wasn't sure I could do." "What kind of something?" Denise thought about how to explain it. The billionaire, the poison, the 20 doctors, the makeshift chemistry lab, and a maintenance closet. "I helped save someone's life," she said finally. "Someone who was very sick and nobody could figure out why, but I figured it out." "Because you're smart," Marcus said. "You're the smartest person I know." "I don't know about that." "I do." Jasmine squeezed her hand. "You gave up school for us. You work nights so you can be here when we get home. You study chemistry in your free time because you love it. That's the definition of smart mom." Denise felt tears pricking at her eye. She blinked them back. "I love you both so much." "We love you too." Marcus grinned. "Even if you smell like hospital." "I do not smell like hospital." "You totally smell like hospital." For the first time in what felt like forever, Denise laughed. The next morning, she returned to Manhattan Medical Center. But this time, she didn't use the basement entrance. This time, she walked through the front doors like she belonged there. The lobby was all marble and glass, expensive art on the walls, well-dressed people moving with purpose. Denise had cleaned these floors 100 times. She'd never walked across them as a visitor. "Can I help you?" The receptionist smiled professionally. "I'm here to see Victor Sterling. My name is Denise Carter." The receptionist's eyes widened. "Miss Carter, of course. Let me get someone to escort you." Word had spread, apparently. An assistant led her to the VIP wing. Different entrance than the one she normally used. Better lighting. Softer carpet. Room 714's door stood open. Inside, Victor Sterling sat propped against expensive pillows, looking remarkably better than he had 2 days ago. Color had returned to his face. His hands had stopped trembling. He looked up as she entered. "Miss Carter." "Mr. Sterling." "Please sit." He gestured to a chair beside his bed. "I understand I owe you my life." Denise sat feeling awkward in a space that had been her workplace just 48 hours ago. "I noticed something the doctors missed, that's all." "That's not all." Sterling's eyes were sharp, despite his weakness. 20 of the best medical minds in the country couldn't solve my case. You solved it with cleaning supplies and a chemistry education you never finished. I got lucky. No. Sterling shook his head slowly. You were prepared. There's a difference. Luck is random. Preparation is earned. He reached for a folder on his nightstand and handed it to her. What's this? Open it. Denise opened the folder. Inside were documents from Columbia University. Scholarship paperwork. Admission forms. I don't understand. I made some calls this morning, Sterling said, to the chemistry department at Columbia. They were very interested to hear about their former student who used a field test to detect thallium poisoning when 20 specialists couldn't. Denise's hands started shaking. Mr. Sterling, full scholarship, room and board, a living stipend for you and your children, everything you need to finish what you started 15 years ago. She stared at the documents, unable to speak. You saved my life, Miss Carter. Let me give you yours back. Denise looked up at him, the tears streaming down her face. Why? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. I owe you everything. Sterling's voice softened. And I know more about you than you think. I know you dropped out of school to raise your siblings when your parents died. I know you've worked nights for 15 years so you could be there for your children during the day. I know you've never stopped studying, never stopped learning, never stopped being the chemist you were meant to be. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. Intelligence like yours shouldn't be mopping floors, Miss Carter. It should be saving lives. Let me help you get there. Denise clutched the folder to her chest, overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. Say yes. She thought about Marcus, Jasmine, the apartment on 125th Street, the dreams she'd packed away 15 years ago, believing they were gone forever. Yes, she whispered. Yes? Sterling smiled. Good. The fall semester starts in 3 months. That should give you time to arrange everything. 3 months. Denise laughed through her tears. That's not much time. You've waited 15 years. I think you can handle 3 months. The door opened. Dr. Harrison stood in the doorway, looking uncomfortable. Am I interrupting? Not at all, Sterling waved him in. I was just thanking Miss Carter for catching what your entire team missed. Harrison's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Yes, about that. He turned to Denise. Miss Carter, I owe you an apology, a real one. You already apologized. I apologized for the misdiagnosis. I didn't apologize for the way I treated you. He took a breath. I dismissed you because of your job title, because I assumed that someone who cleaned floors couldn't possibly understand medicine. I was wrong. Dangerously wrong. You're not the first person to make that assumption. No, I'm sure I'm not. Harrison met her eyes. But I should have been better. This hospital should be better. We will be better. It wasn't much. A few words from a man who'd nearly let his patient die rather than listen to a housekeeper, but it was something. Thank you, Dr. Harrison. He nodded stiffly and left. Sterling watched him go with amusement. That must have cost him. Probably. Denise found herself smiling, but he said it anyway. That's the thing about being wrong, Sterling said. It's easier to admit when you're looking at the person you almost killed. Denise spent another hour with Sterling discussing plans for her education, her future, her children's needs. He had assistants who could help with logistics, lawyers who could handle paperwork, resources she'd never imagined. By the time she left, the sun was setting over Manhattan, painting the city in shades of gold and orange. She stood on the hospital steps, watching the light change, feeling like a different person than she'd been 48 hours ago. Her phone rang. Jasmine. Mom, where are you? You've been gone all day. I'm coming home, baby. I have news. Good news. Denise thought about the scholarship folder in her bag, about the life that had been handed back to her, about the 15 years of invisible struggle that had finally impossibly paid off. The best news, she said. The absolute best news. She walked to the bus stop, the same route she'd taken thousands of times. But this time she didn't feel invisible. This time she felt seen. That evening, Denise gathered her children in their small living room and told them everything. The billionaire, the poison, the 20 doctors who couldn't find the answer, the test she'd run in a maintenance closet at 2 a.m. Marcus's eyes grew wider with each detail. Jasmine listened in stunned silence. "So you're going back to school?" Marcus asked when she finished. "Yes, full scholarship, everything paid for." "What about us? What about your job?" "There's a stipend for living expenses, and I'll be working part-time at the hospital lab while I study." She reached for their hands. "It's going to be different, better." Jasmine finally spoke. "You saved a billionaire's life." "I saved a man's life. The billions didn't matter." "But he's paying for your school because of what you did." "He's investing in my future because he believes I have one." Denise squeezed her daughter's hand. "And I'm going to prove him right." That night, after the children were asleep, Denise sat at the kitchen table with the Columbia folder open in front of her. 15 years ago, she'd walked away from this dream to save her family. She'd told herself it was temporary. She'd told herself she'd go back. She never did. But now, impossibly, the dream had come back to her. She picked up a pen and started filling out the forms. Name Denise Marie Carter. Age 38. Previous education, Columbia University, chemistry incomplete. Reason for returning everything. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of preparation and change. Denise gave notice at the hospital, working her final shifts with a strange mixture of sadness and relief. These floors had been her prison and her classroom for 6 years. She'd learned to be invisible here. She'd learned to see what others missed. Now she was leaving. Her coworkers threw her a small party in the basement break room. Ramon brought a cake with "Congratulations, Dr. Denise," written in blue icing. "I'm not a doctor yet," she protested. "You will be." Ramon hugged her. "Don't forget us little people when you're famous." "Never." Dr. Park stopped by to wish her well. "The toxicology lab offer still stands," Park said. "Once you have your degree, we'd love to have you." "I might take you up on that." "I hope you do." Park smiled. "You have a gift, Denise. The way you see patterns, the way you notice details. That's not something you can teach. It's something you either have or you don't. I learned it from being invisible. When nobody's looking at you, you learn to look at everything else. Then maybe we need more invisible people in medicine." Park shook her hand. "Good luck." Victor Sterling was discharged 2 weeks after his diagnosis. The thallium levels in his blood had dropped to nearly undetectable. His hair was starting to grow back. His hands had stopped trembling. He was going to make a full recovery. Denise visited him before he left one final conversation in the room where everything had changed. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Like a man who was almost murdered by his best friend." Sterling's voice was dry. "It's an interesting sensation." "Have you talked to him, Webb?" "No, I don't think I ever will." Sterling looked out the window at the Manhattan skyline. "I thought he'd forgiven me. For the business, for almost destroying him. I thought we'd moved past it." "Some people don't move past things." "No, they don't." He turned back to her. "But you didn't come here to talk about Marcus Webb." "I came to thank you, for the scholarship, for believing in me." "I didn't give you anything you hadn't already earned." Sterling smiled. "You spent 15 years preparing for a moment you didn't know was coming. That's not luck, Miss Carter, that's faith." "Faith in what?" "In yourself. In the idea that your knowledge mattered even when nobody acknowledged it. In the hope that someday, somehow you'd get a chance to use it." Denise thought about all those nights studying alone. All those library books, all those online lectures watched in stolen moments. "I guess I never stopped believing I'd get back to chemistry." "And now you're going back, full circle." Sterling extended his hand. "Thank you, Denise, for everything." She shook it. "Thank you, Mr. Sterling, for seeing me. You were never invisible. The rest of us were just blind." 3 months later, Denise Carter walked through the gates of Columbia University. She was 38 years old. She was surrounded by students half her age. She was carrying a backpack instead of a mop. And she had never felt more ready for anything in her life. The chemistry building rose before her, all glass and modern architecture. 15 years ago, she'd walked away from this place believing she'd never return. Now she was back. Her phone buzzed. Text from Jasmine, first day. "You got this, Mom." From Marcus, "Go be a scientist." Denise smiled, pocketed her phone, and walked inside. The lecture hall was full of young faces, bright eyes, unlimited futures. They looked at her with curiosity, this older woman settling into a seat near the front. Let them look, she thought. I earned this seat. The professor entered. Dr. Robert Chen, the same professor who taught her about thallium 15 years ago. He was older now, grayer, but his eyes still sparkled with the same passion for chemistry that had inspired her as a 23-year-old scholarship student. Welcome to Advanced Toxicology Methods, Chen said. This semester we'll be exploring the great mimickers, poisons that disguise themselves as disease, killers that hide in plain sight. He paused, scanning the room. His eyes landed on Denise. Recognition flickered across his face. Miss Carter, he said. I heard you were coming back. Every head in the room turned toward her. I understand you already had some practical experience with our subject matter. Denise felt her face warm. A little. A little, Chen smiled. Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't heard the story, you should look it up. Miss Carter here used a field test to diagnose thallium poisoning when 20 specialists couldn't. Saved a man's life with chemistry learned in this very room. Whispers rippled through the lecture hall. So when I tell you that this knowledge matters, Chen continued, that what you learn here can mean the difference between life and death, I want you to remember Miss Carter. Remember that the woman sitting in the front row saw what the experts missed because she never stopped learning, never stopped paying attention, never stopped believing that chemistry could save lives. He turned to the whiteboard. Now, let's talk about thallium. Denise opened her notebook and began to write. She was visible now. Finally, completely, undeniably visible. And she was never going back to the shadows. 6 months into her return to Columbia, Denise Carter discovered that being visible came with its own dangers. The email arrived at 7:43 a.m. on a Tuesday morning while she was reviewing notes for her organic chemistry exam. Unknown sender, no subject line, just 3 words that turned her blood cold. You destroyed everything. Denise stared at the screen, her coffee growing cold in her hand. Marcus Webb was in federal prison awaiting trial. He'd been denied bail after prosecutors argued he was a flight risk. His assets were frozen. His company was collapsing. His reputation was ash. And apparently someone blamed her. She deleted the email and tried to focus on her studies. It was probably nothing. A crank, someone with too much time and too little sense. But 2 days later, another email arrived. I know where your children go to school. Denise's hands shook as she called the FBI. Agent Martinez remembered her immediately. Miss Carter, what can I do for you? I'm getting threats, emails. Someone knows about my kids. Forward them to me. We'll trace the source. Do you think it's Webb from prison? Webb's communications are monitored, but he has associates. People who lost money when his company collapsed. People who blame you for their losses. I didn't do anything wrong. You exposed a murderer. Some people consider that very wrong. Martinez's voice softened. Forward the emails. We'll handle it. Denise hung up and immediately called Jasmine's school, then Marcus's school. Both children were fine. Both schools promised increased vigilance. But the fear had taken root. That night she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to every creak and groan of the old apartment building. Someone knew where her children went to school. Someone wanted her to pay for what she'd done. The threatening emails continued for 2 weeks, each one more specific than the last. Her home address, her class schedule, the route Marcus took to basketball practice. The FBI traced them to a proxy server overseas. Untraceable, professional. Someone's paying for this, Martinez told her. This level of sophistication doesn't come cheap. Webb's associates from them, possibly, or Webb himself through intermediaries. Martinez paused. We can offer protection, surveillance on your apartment, escorts for your children. For how long? As long as it takes. Denise thought about her children growing up with FBI agents watching their every move, thought about the fear that would become their new normal. There has to be another way. There isn't, not until we find who's behind this. She accepted the protection. What choice did she have? For 3 weeks, unmarked cars sat outside her apartment building. Plainclothes agents walked Jasmine and Marcus to school. Denise attended classes with the constant awareness that someone might be watching. The email stopped, but the fear didn't. Then on a Friday afternoon in late October, Agent Martinez called with news. We got him. Denise nearly dropped her phone. Who? Richard Thornton, Webb's former chief financial officer. He lost $40 million when the company collapsed. He's been paying hackers to track your movements and send the threats. Is he in custody? Arrested this morning. He's already talking, trying to cut a deal. Martinez's voice carried grim satisfaction. "It's over, Miss Carter. You're safe." Denise sat down heavily on her couch, the tension of weeks finally releasing. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you." But even as relief flooded through her, she knew something had changed. The world had shown her its teeth. She'd learned that doing the right thing came with a price, and she'd learned that she was willing to pay it. The trial of Marcus Webb began in January, 8 months after his arrest. Denise was called as a witness. She'd known this was coming. The prosecution had warned her. But knowing and experiencing were different things entirely. The federal courthouse in Manhattan was a cathedral of justice, all marble columns, and hushed reverence. Denise wore her best suit purchased specifically for this occasion. She'd practiced her testimony with prosecutors for 3 days. None of it prepared her for facing Marcus Webb across a courtroom. He looked different from the man she'd glimpsed in hospital hallways. Prison had aged him. His expensive haircut had grown out. His tailored suits had been replaced by standard-issue clothing. But his eyes were the same. Cold. Calculating. Fixed on her with hatred that felt almost physical. "State your name for the record." "Denise Marie Carter." "And your occupation?" "I'm a chemistry student at Columbia University. Previously, I worked as an environmental services technician at Manhattan Medical Center." "A housekeeper?" "Yes." The prosecutor walked her through the story. The night she first noticed Sterling's symptoms, the research she conducted, the tests she performed, the confrontation with 20 doctors. Webb's defense attorney objected repeatedly, trying to paint her as an unqualified amateur who'd gotten lucky. "You have no medical degree, correct, Michael?" "Correct." "No formal training in diagnostics." "I have training in chemistry and toxicology." "From courses you took 15 years ago, before you dropped out." "Knowledge doesn't expire." "But credentials do, Miss Carter. You were a housekeeper, a cleaning woman, and you expect this jury to believe you diagnosed something that 20 board-certified physicians couldn't." Denise met the attorney's eyes. "I expect this jury to believe the evidence. The thallium test I performed was confirmed by hospital laboratories. The hand cream tested positive for thallium. Mr. Sterling is alive because someone noticed what the doctors missed. Whether that someone had credentials isn't relevant. What's relevant is that I was right." The attorney tried several more angles of attack. Denise held firm. She'd spent 6 months preparing for this moment, and she wasn't about to crack. When she finally stepped down from the witness stand, her legs were trembling, but her voice was steady. Victor Sterling testified the next day. Denise sat in the gallery watching the man whose life she'd saved describe the friend who'd tried to kill him. "I trusted him completely," Sterling said, his voice heavy with betrayal. "When he brought the hand cream, I thought it was kindness. When he applied it himself, I thought it was friendship. I never imagined—" "What did you think when you learned the truth?" Sterling was quiet for a long moment. "I thought about all the times he sat by my bed watching me die. All the times he held my hand and told me to fight. He was killing me with one hand and comforting me with the other. How did that make you feel? Like nothing I believed about human nature was true." Webb showed no emotion during Sterling's testimony. His face remained blank, controlled. Whatever he felt, he kept it hidden. But when the jury returned their verdict after 3 days of deliberation, something cracked in his expression. "Guilty on all counts." Webb's composure shattered. He lunged toward Denise, who was sitting in the front row of the gallery. "You," he screamed, "you ruined me, a cleaning woman, a nobody." Marshals tackled him before he could reach her. Denise didn't flinch, didn't look away. "I'm not a nobody," she said quietly. "I'm the woman who stopped you." They dragged him out, still screaming. The judge called for order. The gallery buzzed with shock and excitement. Denise sat perfectly still, heart pounding, face calm. She'd done it. Justice had been served. And Marcus Webb would spend the rest of his life in prison. The sentencing hearing came 6 weeks later. The judge gave Webb 45 years with no possibility of parole. For attempted murder, for conspiracy, for witness intimidation through his CFO. Standing outside the courthouse after the sentencing, Denise faced a crowd of reporters for the first time. "Miss Carter, how does it feel to bring down a billionaire?" "I didn't bring anyone down. Marcus Webb brought himself down when he chose to poison his friend." "What's next for you book deals, movie rights?" "What's next is finishing my degree. I have an organic chemistry final next week." The reporters laughed. But Denise wasn't joking. She'd spent 15 years being invisible. She had no interest in becoming famous. She just wanted to complete what she'd started. Victor Sterling was waiting by her car security detail hovering nearby. "Quite a performance in there," he said. "I just told the truth." "That's what made it powerful." Sterling handed her an envelope. "This is for you." "What is it?" "Open it." Inside was a check. Denise looked at the number and nearly fainted. "Mr. Sterling, I can't accept this. It's not charity, it's payment." Sterling's voice was firm. "You saved my life. You endured threats. You testified against a powerful man. That has value." $5 million worth of value. "That's actually less than what I'm paying my lawyers." Sterling smiled. "Take it, Denise. Buy a house. Set up college funds for your children. Live without worrying about rent and electricity bills. You've earned it." Denise stared at the check, her hands trembling. $5 million. More money than she'd see in multiple lifetimes of mopping floors. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll use it wisely. Say you'll finish your degree and become the scientist you were meant to be. Say you'll keep noticing what others miss." "I'll try. That's all any of us can do." Sterling shook her hand. "Good luck, Denise. I'll be watching your career with great interest." He walked away, security closing around him. Denise stood alone in the winter sunlight, holding a check that had just changed her life. Again. The money changed everything and nothing. Denise moved her family out of the cramped apartment on 125th Street to a brownstone in a safer neighborhood. Marcus got his own room. Jasmine got a study space. Denise got a home office where she could spread out her chemistry notes without worrying about kitchen grease. But she still took the bus to Columbia, still sat in the front row of Dr. Chen's lectures, still studied late into the night, driven by the same hunger that had kept her reading textbooks in hospital break rooms. Money could buy comfort. It couldn't buy knowledge. Her classmates treated her differently now. The Sterling case had made her famous in chemistry circles. People recognized her in hallways. Professors sought her opinions. Graduate programs sent recruiting letters. "You could go anywhere," Dr. Chen told her during office hours. "Harvard, MIT, Stanford, they'd all take you." "I started at Columbia. I want to finish at Columbia." "Loyalty. I respect that." Chen leaned back in his chair. "What about after? What do you want to do with this degree you're earning?" Denise had thought about this question constantly. "I want to work in forensic toxicology, finding poisons that hide in plain sight, solving cases that don't make sense." Like Sterling. Like whoever comes next. She met Chen's eyes. There are other Marcus Webbs out there, other victims dying of mysterious illnesses while murderers pretend to be friends. I want to catch them. "You'll need a PhD for that kind of work." "Then I'll get a PhD." Chen smiled. "I thought you'd say that. I've already spoken to the Graduate Admissions Committee. You have a place in our doctoral program if you want it." Denise's breath caught. "Dr. Chen, you've earned it." 3.9 GPA, top scores in every toxicology course, and practical experience that no one else in the program can match. Chen extended his hand. "Welcome to the next chapter, Miss Carter." She shook it, overwhelmed. "Thank you for everything." "Don't thank me. Thank yourself. You did the work. I just opened the door." Denise walked out of Chen's office floating on air, a PhD in toxicology, at Columbia University, the same school she'd walked away from 15 years ago. The circle was closing. Spring arrived with cherry blossoms and change. Marcus made the varsity basketball team, fulfilling a dream he'd had since elementary school. Jasmine got accepted to 3 different colleges, her future suddenly bright with possibility. And Denise completed her undergraduate degree. The graduation ceremony was held in Low Library, surrounded by columns and tradition. Denise sat among students half her age, feeling both ancient and reborn. When her name was called, she walked across the stage to applause that seemed to go on forever. Her children were in the audience. Her colleagues from the hospital, Dr. Park, Dr. Chen, even Dr. Harrison, who'd flown in specifically for the occasion, and Victor Sterling, who'd donated a new wing to the chemistry building in her honor. "Denise Marie Carter," the dean announced. "Bachelor of Science in Chemistry, summa cum laude." She accepted the diploma with hands that trembled only slightly. 15 years, 2 children, 1 murder case, and here she was, finally. The reception afterward was crowded with well-wishers. Dr. Harrison found her near the punch bowl, looking uncomfortable but determined. "Miss Carter, congratulations." "Dr. Harrison, I'm surprised to see you here. I almost didn't come." He fidgeted with his cufflinks. "I've spent 2 years thinking about what happened, about how badly I failed." "You didn't fail. You just didn't see." "Shit." "That's the same thing in medicine." He looked at her directly. "I wanted to tell you something I should have said a long time ago." Denise waited. I was wrong, not just about the diagnosis, about everything, about who deserves to be heard, about where knowledge lives. Harrison took a breath. I've changed how I run my department because of you. We listen now, to nurses, to technicians, to anyone who has information regardless of their title. That's good to hear. It's not enough. It'll never be enough. His voice cracked slightly. Victor Sterling almost died because I wouldn't listen to a housekeeper. That's on me. Forever. Denise studied the man who'd dismissed her, threatened her, nearly let his patient die rather than acknowledge her insight. You're right, she said. It will never be enough. But you're trying. That matters. Harrison nodded, unable to speak. And for what it's worth, Denise continued, Sterling lived. That matters more. She walked away, leaving him alone with his regret. Some wounds healed, some didn't. The important thing was to keep moving forward. The doctoral program consumed the next 4 years. Denise threw herself into research with the same intensity she'd once applied to surviving on $11 an hour. She published papers, presented at conferences, developed new detection methods for obscure poisons. Her reputation grew. Forensic departments across the country began consulting her on difficult cases. The woman who'd exposed the Sterling poisoning had become an expert in her own right. But she never forgot where she came from. Every semester she guest lectured in Dr. Chen's undergraduate toxicology course. She told her story to wide-eyed students who couldn't imagine mopping hospital floors while memorizing chemical structures. Credentials matter, she told them, but observation matters more. Anyone can learn facts. The skill that will save lives is seeing what others miss. How do you learn that? A student asked once. Denise smiled. You learn it by being invisible, by existing in spaces where no one thinks to look at you, by watching while the world forgets you're there. But we're not invisible. Then make yourself invisible. Work a job where no one sees you. Ride the bus. Clean offices after hours. Watch how people behave when they think they're alone. Denise leaned forward. The best scientists aren't the ones with the most knowledge. They're the ones who notice what everyone else ignores. The student nodded slowly, understanding dawning. These were the moments Denise lived for now, passing on what she'd learned. Creating more observers in a world that desperately needed them. The phone call came on a Thursday afternoon in late September, 4 years after her graduation from the undergraduate program. Dr. Carter, this is Director Phillips with the FBI's Forensic Science Division. Denise set down her research notes. How can I help you? We have a case. Multiple deaths across 3 states, all presenting as natural causes. But the pattern suggests otherwise. What kind of pattern? That's what we need you to tell us. We're hitting dead ends with our standard protocols. Someone suggested we call you. Someone? Agent Martinez? He said if anyone could see what we're missing, it's the woman who solved the Sterling case. Denise looked at the dissertation defense she'd been preparing for. 2 weeks of work remained. Her academic career was finally reaching its culmination. But people were dying. Send me the files, she said. I'll take a look. The case files arrived electronically within the hour. 5 deaths in 7 months. Different cities, different demographics, different apparent causes. But something connected them. Something the FBI couldn't see. Denise spread the files across her kitchen table just like she'd done with library books 15 years ago. She studied autopsy reports, toxicology panels, medical histories, and slowly a pattern emerged. All 5 victims had recently changed banks. All 5 had opened new investment accounts. All 5 had met with the same financial advisor before they died. The advisor worked for a company called Meridian Wealth Management. Denise called Director Phillips. I think I found something. Already. The connection isn't medical, it's financial. All 5 victims were clients of the same investment firm. Silence on the line. We checked financials, nothing flagged. Did you check the advisor, specifically his client mortality rate? More silence. Send me what you have. I'll have a team on it within the hour. Denise hung up and returned to the files. Her dissertation could wait. Her academic career could wait. People were dying, and she was the only one who'd noticed why. The financial advisor's name was Thomas Chen, no relation to her professor. He'd been with Meridian Wealth Management for 6 years, managing portfolios for elderly clients with substantial assets. 23 of his clients had died in the past 3 years. All had named him as a beneficiary in their wills. All had shown symptoms consistent with chronic low-level poisoning. The FBI raided Meridian Wealth Management the following Tuesday. They found thallium compounds hidden in Chen's desk drawer, along with detailed notes on his clients' medications and daily routines. He'd been poisoning them for years. Elderly people, lonely people, people who trusted their financial advisor with their lives. And no one had noticed until Denise looked at the files. Director Phillips called her personally to deliver the news. 23 victims, possibly more. You just exposed one of the worst serial killers in American history. I just connected the dots. You connected dots no one else saw. Phillips paused. I have a proposition for you. What kind of proposition? Join us. The FBI's Forensic Science Division. We need people like you, Carter. People who see patterns. People who don't accept easy answers. Denise thought about her dissertation, her academic career, the safe path she'd been building toward. Then she thought about 23 elderly people poisoned by someone they trusted. I'll think about it. Don't think too long. The world needs you now, not after you finished your PhD. She hung up and sat in her kitchen, the same kitchen where she'd once struggled to pay electricity bills. The FBI wanted her, not as a consultant, as an agent, a specialist, someone who hunted killers for a living. It wasn't the path she'd planned, but then again, nothing in her life had gone according to plan. That evening she called a family meeting. Marcus was 20 now, finishing his sophomore year at Syracuse on a basketball scholarship. Jasmine was 22, working on her master's in social work at NYU. Both came home when she asked. The FBI offered me a job, Denise announced. Marcus's jaw dropped. Like catching criminals. Like finding patterns in crimes that no one else can solve. Forensic toxicology consulting. Mom, that's incredible. Jasmine grabbed her hand. What did you say? I said I'd think about it. But I wanted to talk to you both first. Why? Marcus looked confused. It's your life. Your decision. Because everything I've done for the past 20 years has been for this family. I dropped out of school for you. I mopped floors for you. I went back to college for you. Denise looked at her children, these adults who'd grown up watching her struggle. I need to know that if I do this, if I take this path, you're okay with it. Jasmine's eyes filled with tears. Mom, you saved a billionaire's life by paying attention when no one else would. You just caught a serial killer by looking at files. How could we not be okay with you using those gifts? It might be dangerous sometimes. Your whole life has been dangerous. You raised 2 kids on minimum wage in New York City. You testified against a murderer who tried to have you killed. Danger is what you do. Marcus nodded. Take the job, Mom. Save some more lives. Be the hero we always knew you were. Denise pulled her children into a hug, tears streaming down her face. 20 years ago, she'd given up her dreams for them. Now they were giving her permission to dream again. The next morning, Denise called Director Phillips. I'm in. Excellent. When can you start? After I defend my dissertation, 2 weeks. We'll have a desk waiting. She hung up and looked around her kitchen. The brownstone that Sterling's money had bought. The degree on the wall that her sacrifice had earned. The life that a single observation in a hospital room had made possible. From housekeeper to FBI specialist. From invisible to indispensable. The circle wasn't just closing anymore. It was opening into something entirely new. Denise's dissertation defense took place on a crisp October morning, 5 years after she'd returned to Columbia. The committee included Dr. Chen, 2 professors from Harvard, and a Nobel laureate in chemistry, who'd flown in specifically to hear her present. Her topic, detection and analysis of chronic low-level poisoning, new methodologies, Huns, for identifying the undetectable. She spoke for 90 minutes without notes. The committee questioned her for another 2 hours. Every answer she gave built on knowledge earned through both academic study and Pershwell's practical experience. When they announced their decision, Dr. Chen had tears in his eyes. Passed unanimously, with distinction. He shook her hand. Congratulations, Dr. Carter. Dr. Carter, the words she'd dreamed of hearing for 20 years. Finally and possibly, they were hers. The graduation ceremony was smaller this time. Doctoral candidates crossing the stage one by one, each representing years of struggle and sacrifice. When Denise's name was called, the applause was thunderous. Her children were there. Victor Sterling was there. Agent Martinez and Director Phillips were there. Even Dr. Harrison, who'd become something like a friend over the years, stood and clapped. Dr. Denise Marie Carter, the dean announced, Doctor of Philosophy and Chemistry specializing in forensic toxicology. She walked across the stage in a blur of emotion. 15 years of mopping floors. 5 years of undergraduate work, 4 years of doctoral research, one moment of observation that changed everything, and now finally she was complete. That night, there was a party at her brownstone. The house was full of people who'd become her family over the past 5 years. Colleagues, professors, students she'd mentored, FBI agents who'd become friends. Victor Sterling pulled her aside near the end of the evening. "Quite a journey," he said. "Quite a journey," she agreed. "Any regrets?" Denise thought about the question. The poverty, the struggle, the years of being invisible. "No," she said finally. "If anything had been different, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be me." "That's the right answer," Sterling smiled. "You know, I've been thinking about legacy lately, about what I'll leave behind when I'm gone. You're not going anywhere for a long time. Maybe not, but I want my life to mean something, to have made a difference." He looked at her. "You've already done that, Denise. You've saved lives, caught killers, inspired countless students, and you're just getting started." "I hope so." "I know so." Sterling raised his glass. "To Dr. Denise Carter, the woman who saw what no one else could see." Denise raised her own glass, surrounded by the people she loved, standing in the life she'd built from nothing. "To seeing," she said, "and to never being invisible again." 3 years into her FBI career, Dr. Denise Carter faced the case that would test everything she'd learned. The call came at 4:47 a.m. on a Monday morning. Director Phillips's voice was tight with urgency. "We have a situation, multiple victims, same poison signature, but this time Carter the target is political." Denise was already reaching for her clothes. How political? "Senator Elizabeth Warren's daughter. She's in the ICU at Georgetown University Hospital. Doctors are stumped." "I'm on my way." The FBI jet landed in Washington, D.C. 3 hours later. A black SUV rushed Denise straight to Georgetown sirens clearing traffic. Agent Martinez met her at the hospital entrance. His face was grim. "It's bad. Sarah Warren, 34 years old, collapsed during a charity gala last night. Presenting with multi-organ dysfunction. Sound familiar?" Too familiar. Denise's mind was already racing. What do the doctors say? Same thing they always say. Unknown etiology, autoimmune cascade. They're running every test in the book. Except the right one. Martinez handed her a tablet with Sarah Warren's medical file. Denise scanned it as they walked. Progressive peripheral neuropathy, hair loss, gastrointestinal distress, abnormal liver enzymes. Her blood ran cold. "This is thallium. Textbook presentation." "We suspected. That's why we called you." Martinez lowered his voice. "But there's a complication." "What complication?" "Senator Warren is on the Intelligence Committee. She's been leading investigations into foreign interference. If her daughter was poisoned, this becomes international. This becomes a potential act of war." Denise stopped walking. The weight of what she was facing pressed down on her shoulders. A senator's daughter. Foreign agents. Political consequences that could shake the nation. And she was the one who had to find the truth. "Take me to her," she said. Sarah Warren looked like death waiting to claim her. The young woman lay motionless in the ICU bed connected to machines that fought to keep her alive. Her mother sat beside her, the powerful senator reduced to a frightened parent clutching her child's hand. Senator Warren looked up as Denise entered. Her eyes were red from crying, but her voice was steel. "You're Dr. Carter, the one who solved the Sterling case." "Yes, ma'am." "Can you save my daughter?" "I'm going to try." Denise approached the bed, studying Sarah's symptoms with practiced eyes. The fingernail discoloration was there, subtle but unmistakable. The hair on the pillow showed the distinctive pattern she'd seen before. "How long has she been symptomatic?" "She mentioned feeling tired about 3 weeks ago," Senator Warren said. "Then the numbness in her feet started. We thought it was stress. She worked so hard." "Any changes in her routine recently? New foods, new products, new people in her life?" "She started dating someone new about 2 months ago." Denise's attention sharpened. "Who?" "Alexander Volkov. He's a diplomat at the Russian embassy." The room went silent. Martinez caught Denise's eye. His expression said everything. Russian diplomat, senator on Intelligence Committee, daughter being poisoned. This wasn't just attempted murder. This was espionage. "I need to see everything she's been exposed to," Denise said. "Every gift he's given her, every product in her apartment, everything." Martinez nodded and stepped out to make calls. Denise turned back to Senator Warren. "Ma'am, I need to ask you something difficult." "Anything." "Did your daughter have access to classified information through you?" The senator's face paled. "She had dinner at my house every Sunday. We talked about my work sometimes. General things. Nothing specific, but enough to make her valuable to someone looking for intelligence. Warren's composure cracked. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Are you saying he targeted her? That their entire relationship was... I'm saying we need to find out, and quickly. The FBI searched Sarah Warren's apartment within hours. Denise supervised the collection personally, directing agents to gather every cosmetic, every food item, every gift that Alexander Volkov had given to his girlfriend. There were many gifts, expensive ones. A cashmere sweater from Paris, jewelry from Tiffany's, perfume from a boutique in Moscow, and a set of herbal tea imported from Russia that Sarah drank every morning. Test this first, Denise told the forensic team. Thallium is odorless and colorless. It would be undetectable in tea. The results came back 4 hours later. Positive for thallium, concentrated in the tea leaves, enough to kill slowly and painfully over months. Alexander Volkov had been poisoning Sarah Warren with her morning cup of tea. Martinez delivered the news to Senator Warren, while Denise began treatment coordination. We need to start Prussian blue immediately, she told the medical team. The thallium levels in her blood are critical. Every hour we delay increases the risk of permanent damage. The attending physician, Dr. Morrison, looked skeptical. With respect, Dr. Carter, we haven't confirmed thallium poisoning through our own labs. Then confirm it, but start treatment now. I've seen this before. I know what I'm looking at. Hospital protocol almost killed Victor Sterling. Denise stepped forward, her voice hard. I'm telling you, this woman has been poisoned with thallium. The source has been identified and tested. If you wait for your protocols, she will die. And you will have to explain to a United States senator why her daughter is dead because you needed extra paperwork. Morrison stared at her. The other doctors exchanged glances. Start the Prussian blue, Morrison finally said, and run our own thallium assay. Stat. Sarah Warren's condition stabilized within 12 hours. The Prussian blue worked exactly as Denise had predicted, binding to the thallium in her system and allowing her body to excrete it. By the following morning, her vital signs were improving. Senator Warren found Denise in the hospital cafeteria staring at a cup of coffee she was too tired to drink. You saved her life. Denise looked up. The treatment saved her life. I just identified the poison. Don't minimize what you did. The senator sat down across from her. Dr. Morrison told me you forced them to start treatment before their protocols allowed. You fought for my daughter when the system would have let her die. The system almost killed someone I cared about once. I don't trust it anymore. Warren studied her. The Sterling case. I read about it. You were a housekeeper who saw what doctors couldn't. I was a chemist who happened to be mopping floors. And now you're an FBI specialist who just exposed a Russian intelligence operation. Warren leaned forward. Do you understand what this means? Volkov wasn't just targeting my daughter. He was targeting me, my committee, national security. I understand. They're going to try to bury this. The diplomatic implications are enormous. Both sides will want to make it disappear. They can try. Denise met her eyes. But your daughter almost died. 23 elderly people in the Chen case did die. I don't let murderers walk away because it's politically convenient. Warren smiled grimly. Neither do I. She extended her hand. I think we're going to be allies, Dr. Carter. I think we are. The diplomatic fallout was immediate and explosive. Alexander Volkov was declared persona non grata and expelled from the United States within 48 hours. The Russian government denied all involvement, calling the accusations baseless provocation. Senator Warren held a press conference standing beside her recovering daughter and named Denise Carter as the expert who had saved Sarah's life. Once again, Warren said Dr. Carter saw what others missed. She identified a poison that was designed to be undetectable. She forced treatment when protocols would have caused delay. My daughter is alive because of her brilliance and her courage. Denise watched the press conference from her FBI office, uncomfortable with the attention. Director Phillips appeared in her doorway. You just became the most famous toxicologist in America. I don't want to be famous. I want to catch poisoners. Well, you're getting both. Phillips handed her a stack of files. These arrived this morning. Cases from across the country. Local police departments, state agencies, even Interpol. Everyone wants your eyes on their unsolved poisoning cases. Denise looked at the stack. Dozens of files. Dozens of potential victims. I can't handle all of these alone. That's why we're expanding your department. You'll have a team now. Analysts, investigators, forensic specialists, all reporting to you. Me? You're being promoted. Special Agent in Charge, Forensic Toxicology Unit. Phillips smiled. Congratulations, Carter. You've earned it. Building her team became Denise's new mission. She didn't want traditional FBI agents. She wanted observers, people who saw patterns, people who noticed what others missed. Her first recruit was a former nurse named Maria Santos, who had been fired from a hospital for insisting that a patient's death was murder when the attending physicians ruled it natural causes. She'd been right. The patient's wife had been poisoning him with antifreeze for his insurance money. "Why did you keep pushing?" Denise asked during the interview. "Because I knew what I saw. The symptoms didn't add up. The doctors didn't want to hear it, but I couldn't let it go. Even though it cost you your job, some things matter more than job security." Denise smiled. Welcome to the team. Her second recruit was a former IRS auditor named James Chen, who had uncovered a massive fraud scheme by noticing patterns in tax returns that no one else had spotted. Her third was a retired homicide detective named Rosa Martinez, no relation to Agent Martinez, who had solved cold cases by re-examining evidence that previous investigators had dismissed as irrelevant. Each of them shared one quality: the ability to see what others couldn't. The willingness to trust their observations over conventional wisdom. Within 6 months, Denise had assembled a team of 12 specialists. They called themselves the Pattern Recognition Unit, though the rest of the FBI called them something else. The Invisible Squad. Because most of them, like Denise, had been invisible once. Overlooked, dismissed, underestimated, and they'd all learned to see while no one was watching them. The cases piled up faster than they could solve them. A wealthy philanthropist in Chicago, whose rare neurological disorder turned out to be arsenic administered by his personal chef. A software executive in San Jose whose sudden onset dementia was actually mercury poisoning from contaminated supplements. A college student in Boston whose mysterious autoimmune condition was ricin exposure from a jealous roommate. Each case followed the same pattern. Symptoms that looked like disease. Doctors who searched for medical explanations. Poisoners who operated in plain sight because no one thought to look for murder. Denise's team found them all. But with each success came new challenges. Poisoners learned from their failures. They found new toxins, new delivery methods, new ways to evade detection, and some of them started targeting the people who hunted them. The first threat arrived in Denise's mail 2 years after she became Special Agent in Charge. A single photograph, her brownstone in New York, her children's faces circled in red. No message, no demands, just a clear statement: we know where you live. Denise called an emergency meeting with Director Phillips. "It's retaliation time," she said. "For the cases we've closed, someone wants to send a message. We'll increase security, 24-hour surveillance on your home and family." That's not enough. Whoever sent this knows what they're doing. Professional-level threat assessment. What do you suggest? Denise had been thinking about this since the moment she opened the envelope. We go on a fence, track the photograph back to its source, find out who's watching my family and why. That could take months. Then we have months of work ahead of us. The investigation led to unexpected places. The photograph had been printed at a commercial facility in New Jersey, paid for with cash. Security footage showed a woman in her 50s making the purchase. Facial recognition identified her as Margaret Webb, Marcus Webb's sister. Denise stared at the identification, her blood running cold. Marcus Webb. The man she'd exposed 8 years ago. The man serving 45 years in federal prison. He was still reaching out from behind bars, still trying to destroy her life. He never forgave you, Martinez said when she shared the discovery. Some people can't let go. He tried to have me killed once before. Through his CFO. And now through his sister. Martinez pulled up Margaret Webb's file. She's been visiting him monthly since his incarceration, transferring money to various accounts. We suspected she was helping him maintain outside operations, but we could never prove it. Can we prove it now? The photograph is circumstantial. We need more. Denise made a decision she'd been avoiding for 8 years. I need to talk to him. Webb in person. He's the only one who can tell us what's really going on, the only one who knows how far this reaches. Martinez looked worried. Carter, this man tried to kill you. Facing him again is exactly what he doesn't expect. Denise stood. Arrange the visit. Maximum security protocols. I want to look Marcus Webb in the eye and ask him why he won't let this go. The federal penitentiary in Colorado was designed to hold America's most dangerous criminals. Marcus Webb had aged badly in prison. His expensive suits were gone, replaced by orange jumpsuit. His perfect hair was gray and unkempt. The confidence that had once radiated from him had curdled into bitterness. But his eyes were the same. Cold. Calculating. filled with hatred when they landed on Denise. The cleaning woman. His voice dripped contempt. I heard you'd become important. FBI specialist. National hero. All because you noticed my hand cream. I noticed you were murdering your friend. I was solving a problem. Sterling destroyed my company, my reputation, my life. The world is better without him. The world is fine with him in it. The world is better with you in here. Webb's jaw tightened. What do you want, Carter come to gloat? I came to ask why you're threatening my family. I don't know what you're talking about. Your sister sent me a photograph of my children. Same pattern as the threats 8 years ago. Same intention. Webb smiled. It was the smile of a predator patient and cruel. My sister acts on her own initiative. I can't control what she does from in here. You can tell her to stop. Why would I do that? Webb leaned forward. You took everything from me, Carter. My freedom, my fortune, my future. Did you think there wouldn't be consequences? I exposed a murderer. The consequences were your own. The consequences were justice. My justice. His smile widened. You think you're safe because you work for the FBI? You think your little team of misfits can protect you? I have 45 years to plan. 45 years to reach out through the cracks in the system. 45 years to make you pay for what you did. Denise felt fear trying to take hold. She refused to let it. You're giving me a confession right now. You know that... I'm not confessing anything. I'm explaining reality. Webb sat back. My sister loves me. She sees how I've suffered. If she chooses to express her displeasure with the people responsible, that's her choice, not mine. We'll arrest her. Conspiracy charges. Prove it. Prove that I directed her actions from inside a maximum security prison with monitored communications. Webb laughed. You can't. You won't. And every day you fail, you'll wonder when the next threat is coming, when the next photograph will arrive, when your children will stop being safe. Denise stood. Her heart was pounding, but her voice was steady. You're wrong about one thing, Webb. What's that? I don't wonder, I prepare. And I've spent 8 years learning how to catch people like you. She met his eyes. Your sister will make a mistake. They always do. And when she does, I'll be there. Just like I was there for you. She walked out without looking back. Webb's laughter followed her down the corridor. The hunt for Margaret Webb consumed the next 6 months. Denise's team tracked her movements, analyzed her finances, monitored her communications. They built a case piece by piece, gathering evidence that couldn't be denied. Margaret was careful. Years of watching her brother's trial had taught her what mistakes to avoid, but she wasn't invisible, and Denise had built a team that specialized in seeing the invisible. The breakthrough came from James Chen, the former IRS auditor. She's been making payments to a private investigator, he reported. Cash transactions, but she used the same ATM every time. Creature of habit. Who's the investigator? Robert Simmons, former police officer, lost his license for stalking a witness. He's been tracking your family's movements for the past 8 months. Can we prove the connection to Margaret? She visited his office 3 times in the past month. We have surveillance footage. Denise felt the case clicking into place. Get me warrants. Everything. Simmons' office, Margaret's home, all their electronic devices. On what grounds? Conspiracy to commit intimidation of a federal officer, stalking, whatever else we can make stick. The raids happened simultaneously. FBI agents descended on Simmons' office in Newark and Margaret Webb's apartment in Manhattan. They seized computers, phones, files, and evidence that connected both of them directly to Marcus Webb's prison communications. Margaret had been smart enough to use coded language, but she hadn't been smart enough to destroy the decoder key that her brother had given her during a prison visit. The key was hidden in a book. The same book she brought to every visit, passing it back and forth with Marcus under the guards' noses. Denise examined the evidence personally. The codes revealed everything. Plans to intimidate her family, schemes to undermine her career, even discussions about potential violence if the threats didn't work. Marcus Webb had been running an operation from prison for 8 years, and his sister had been his willing executioner. Margaret Webb was arrested on 17 federal charges. She broke during interrogation, spilling everything in a desperate attempt to avoid prison. He told me you destroyed him, she sobbed. He said you needed to pay. He said you'd stolen his life and we had to steal yours. By threatening my children, he said we'd never hurt them. Just scare you, just make you suffer like he suffered. And if scaring didn't work, Margaret went silent. What was the next step, Margaret? What did Marcus plan if the photographs weren't enough? I want a lawyer. You'll get one, but I want you to understand something first. Denise leaned forward. Your brother is never getting out of prison, and now neither are you. The difference is you had a choice. You could have walked away from his hatred. You could have built your own life. Instead, you let him use you to terrorize an innocent family. Margaret's face crumpled. He's my brother. He's all I have. No, he was all you had. Now you have nothing. The trial was short. The evidence was overwhelming. Margaret Webb received 15 years for conspiracy stalking and intimidation of a federal officer. Marcus Webb received an additional 20 years for directing criminal activity from prison. He would die behind bars now. They both would. Denise watched the sentencing from the gallery, feeling a complex mixture of relief and sadness. 8 years of her life had been shadowed by Marcus Webb's hatred. 8 years of looking over her shoulder, protecting her family, wondering when the next attack would come. Now it was truly over. Martinez sat beside her as the court emptied. How do you feel? Empty. Is that strange? No, endings are always complicated. He paused. For what it's worth, you handled this perfectly. Most people would have crumbled under that kind of pressure. I learned a long time ago not to crumble. It doesn't help anything. No, it doesn't. Martinez stood. Come on. Your team is waiting. They want to celebrate. Celebrate what? You, everything you've built, everything you've survived. He smiled. They're calling it the end of an era. Denise stood slowly, feeling the weight of years lifting from her shoulders. An era was ending, but another was just beginning. The celebration was held at a restaurant in Manhattan near her old neighborhood. Her entire team was there. Maria Santos, James Chen, Rosa Martinez, all 12 specialists who had become her family over the past 3 years. Victor Sterling appeared unexpectedly, looking healthier than he had in years. I heard about Webb, he said, embracing her. I wanted to congratulate you in person. You didn't have to come all this way. Yes, I did. You saved my life 10 years ago. You've spent every year since protecting others the same way. The least I can do is show up when you finally get to rest. Denise looked around the room at the people who had become her world. Her children, both adults now. Marcus had finished his basketball career and was coaching at a high school in Brooklyn. Jasmine had become a social worker, helping families like theirs navigate impossible circumstances. Her colleagues, former outcasts who had found purpose and belonging in her team. Her mentors, Dr. Chen and Dr. Park, and even Dr. Harrison, who sent his congratulations from retirement. Her partner, Agent Martinez, who had stood beside her through every crisis and never once wavered. A family built not from blood, but from shared struggle. From seeing what others missed. From refusing to be invisible. Sterling raised his glass. To Dr. Denise Carter, who saw what no one else could see, who fought when no one else would fight, who built something extraordinary from nothing but determination and truth. The room echoed the toast. Denise raised her own glass, tears streaming down her face. To seeing, she said, and to everyone who helped me learn how. She drank, surrounded by love, finally at peace. The war was over, but the work would continue, because somewhere out there another invisible poison was claiming another invisible victim, and Denise Carter would be there to find it. 15 years after she first noticed Victor Sterling's yellow fingernails, Dr. Srour, Denise Carter received a phone call that would bring her journey full circle. It was a Tuesday morning in October. She was reviewing case files in her FBI office when her personal cell rang. The caller ID showed Manhattan Medical Center. Dr. Carter, this is Dr. Jennifer Park. Denise sat up straighter. She hadn't spoken to Park in over a year. Jennifer, is everything okay? I need your help. We have a patient, young woman, 26 years old. Progressive neurological symptoms, multi-organ dysfunction. The presentation is, Park's voice caught, it's identical to Victor Sterling. Denise's blood ran cold. Thallium. We tested for it immediately. Negative. We tested for every heavy metal in the book. All negative, but the symptoms are textbook poisoning. I've never seen anything like it. I'm on my way. Denise caught the next flight to New York. 3 hours later, she was standing in the same hospital where her journey had begun, facing the same kind of mystery that had changed her life. The patient's name was Rebecca Torres, 26 years old, graduate student at Columbia, engaged to be married in 3 months. Now she was dying and nobody knew why. Dr. Park met Denise outside the ICU. She presented 4 days ago with peripheral numbness. We thought it was carpal tunnel from too much typing. Then the hair started falling out. Then her liver enzymes spiked. Now she's in multi-organ failure. Same progression as Sterling. Exactly the same, but faster, much faster. Park handed her Rebecca's chart. We've tested for everything, Denise. Thallium, arsenic, mercury lead, all negative. Heavy metal panels, toxicology screens, autoimmune markers. Nothing explains what's happening to her. Denise studied the chart, her mind racing through possibilities. What about newer poisons, synthetic compounds, things that wouldn't show up on standard screens? We thought of that. We sent samples to 3 different labs. Nobody can identify anything unusual. Then we're missing something. Denise looked toward the ICU door. I need to see her, talk to her family, examine everything she's been exposed to. Her fiancé is in the waiting room. He's been here since she was admitted. Start with him. The fiancé's name was Daniel Morrison, 28 years old, investment banker, clean-cut, well-dressed, visibly distraught. He stood when Denise entered the waiting room, hope and desperation warring in his eyes. Are you another specialist? Please, you have to help her. We're getting married in April. We've been planning it for 2 years. I'm Dr. Denise Carter, FBI Forensic Toxicology Unit. Morrison's face went pale. FBI, you think someone poisoned her? I think we need to explore every possibility. Denise sat across from him. Tell me about Rebecca's routine. What she eats, what products she uses, who she sees regularly. She's a graduate student. She basically lives in the chemistry lab at Columbia, eats takeout drinks, too much coffee, crashes at my place on weekends. Morrison ran his hands through his hair. She's healthy. She runs marathons. She doesn't smoke or drink. This doesn't make sense. What about the chemistry lab? What's she working on? Her dissertation, something about synthetic compounds. I don't really understand it. Denise's attention sharpened. Synthetic compounds? She's been developing new materials for medical applications, polymers or something. She's very passionate about it. Who supervises her research? Dr. Harold Finch. He's been her advisor for 3 years. Denise filed the name away. Has anything changed recently? New people in her life? New products? Anything out of the ordinary? Morrison thought for a moment. She started a new phase of her research about 6 weeks ago. Been working longer hours, coming home later. She said they were close to a breakthrough. 6 weeks ago. When did her symptoms start? About 4 weeks ago. The numbness. 2 weeks of exposure before symptoms appeared, consistent with gradual poisoning. I need access to her lab, Denise said, and I need to talk to Dr. Finch. The chemistry building at Columbia felt like coming home. Denise walked through halls where she'd studied 15 years ago, where she'd earned her doctorate, where she'd learned to see patterns that others missed. Dr. Harold Finch met her at the laboratory door. He was 60 years old, gray-bearded, wearing the rumpled look of an academic who spent more time thinking than grooming. Dr. Carter, I've heard of your work. The Sterling case, the Chen serial killings? He shook her hand. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. Tell me about Rebecca's research. Finch led her into the lab, a maze of equipment and chemicals that felt intimately familiar. Rebecca has been developing synthetic polymers for drug delivery systems. The goal is to create compounds that can target specific tissues without affecting others. What chemicals does she work with? Standard organic solvents, some rare earth elements for conductivity testing. Finch paused. Nothing that would cause the symptoms she's experiencing. Are you certain? I've supervised this lab for 20 years. I know every compound we use. Denise walked through the space, examining equipment, checking labels, looking for anything unusual. Her eyes stopped on a locked cabinet in the corner. What's in there? Special materials, rare compounds we use for advanced experiments. Only myself and Rebecca have keys. Open it. Finch hesitated. Dr. Carter, those materials are extremely valuable. Some are irreplaceable. A woman is dying. Open the cabinet. Finch unlocked the cabinet. Inside were rows of carefully labeled containers, each one representing compounds worth thousands of dollars. Denise scanned the labels. Most were standard research materials. But one caught her attention. Polonium-210. Why do you have radioactive materials in a chemistry lab? Rebecca's research involves testing polymer conductivity under various conditions. Small amounts of radioactive isotopes are used for calibration. How small now? Microgram quantities, perfectly safe with proper handling. Denise examined the container. It appeared full, but something about the seal looked wrong. When was this last accessed? Finch checked a logbook. 6 weeks ago, Rebecca needed it for a new experiment series. 6 weeks, the same time frame Morrison had mentioned, the same time frame when Rebecca's symptoms began. I need this container tested, and I need samples from everything else in this cabinet. Dr. Carter, polonium wouldn't cause the symptoms Rebecca is showing. We checked for radiation exposure immediately. You checked for external radiation. Polonium-210 is an alpha emitter. It's only dangerous if ingested or inhaled. Denise met his eyes. If someone contaminated her food or water with polonium, standard radiation detectors wouldn't find it, and the symptoms would look exactly like heavy metal poisoning. Finch's face went gray. That's impossible. Who would... That's what I intend to find out. The FBI forensic team arrived within hours. They swept the lab, tested every surface, analyzed every compound. The results came back the next morning. The polonium container had been tampered with. Traces of the radioactive isotope were found on Rebecca's personal coffee mug, her water bottle, and her lab notebook. Someone had been systematically exposing her to lethal radiation for 6 weeks. Denise called an emergency meeting with Dr. Park and the medical team.
It's
polonium-210 poisoning. The symptoms mimic heavy metal toxicity because the mechanism of damage is similar. Cellular destruction, organ failure, neurological breakdown. Polonium? Park's voice was stunned. That's what killed Alexander Litvinenko. Exactly. It's nearly impossible to detect unless you're specifically looking for it, and by the time symptoms appear, the damage is already severe. Can we treat it? There's no specific antidote. We can provide supportive care. Chelation therapy might help, but the prognosis... Denise paused, hating the words she had to say. The prognosis depends on how much she was exposed to and for how long. Park closed her eyes. She's going to die. I don't know, but we need to find out who did this and why. The exposure might still be ongoing. Who would poison a graduate student with polonium? That's not something you buy at a pharmacy. No, it's something you buy from very specific, very dangerous sources. Denise's mind was racing. This isn't a crime of passion. This is planned, professional, which means someone had a reason. What reason could possibly justify poisoning a 26-year-old woman? That's what I'm going to find out. The investigation led Denise back to the one person with consistent access to both Rebecca and the polonium, Dr. Harold Finch. She didn't want to believe it. Finch had seemed genuinely concerned, genuinely helpful. But the evidence pointed in only one direction. Only Finch and Rebecca had keys to the cabinet. Only Finch had the knowledge to handle polonium safely. Only Finch had access to Rebecca's personal items in the lab. Denise ordered a deep background check on the professor. What came back changed everything. Finch was under investigation by the university for academic misconduct. 3 former students had accused him of stealing their research and publishing it under his own name. Rebecca Torres had been gathering evidence against him. She'd filed a complaint with the ethics board 2 months ago, claiming Finch had taken credit for her polymer breakthrough, and now she was dying. Denise confronted Finch in his office the following morning. Rebecca was going to expose you. Finch's face went through several expressions: surprise, fear, calculation. I don't know what you're talking about. She filed an ethics complaint, said you stole her research. I've seen the documents. Those allegations are unfounded. Rebecca has been under a great deal of stress. Rebecca has been under a great deal of polonium. Denise stepped closer. You poisoned her to protect your reputation, your career, your legacy. That's absurd. I would never... You had access. You had motive. You had the knowledge to handle radioactive materials without exposing yourself. Denise's voice was steel. What I want to know is where you got the polonium, because the amount in that cabinet isn't enough to cause the level of contamination we found. Finch's composure cracked. Just slightly, just enough. I want a lawyer. You're going to need one. Denise signaled to the FBI agents waiting outside. Dr. Harold Finch, you're under arrest for the attempted murder of Rebecca Torres. They led him away in handcuffs, his academic career ending in disgrace. But Denise felt no satisfaction. Rebecca was still dying. Catching the poisoner didn't cure the poison. The next 72 hours were a race against time. Rebecca's condition deteriorated rapidly. Her kidneys began to fail. Her bone marrow showed signs of collapse. The radiation was destroying her from the inside out. Denise worked alongside the medical team, suggesting treatments, analyzing options, refusing to give up. There has to be something, she told Park during a late-night consultation, some way to remove the polonium from her system. We've tried chelation. It's not working fast enough. What about blood transfusions? Replacing her contaminated blood with clean blood. We've done 3 transfusions. Her body keeps producing contaminated cells. Bone marrow transplant. Too risky in her current state. The radiation has weakened her immune system too much. Denise stared at Rebecca through the ICU window. 26 years old, brilliant, full of promise, dying because a jealous professor couldn't handle being exposed. There has to be something we're not seeing. Denise. Park put a hand on her shoulder. Sometimes there isn't. Sometimes the poison wins. I don't accept that. Neither do I. But we have to prepare for the possibility. Rebecca died on a Thursday afternoon 6 weeks after her poisoning began. Her fiancé was holding her hand when her heart stopped. Her parents had just arrived from Chicago. They were still in the elevator when the monitors went flat. Denise stood outside the ICU watching through the window as the medical team tried to revive her. They worked for 20 minutes before Park finally called time of death. 3:47 p.m., October 23rd, a brilliant young scientist murdered by someone who should have been her mentor. Denise had solved the case, found the poisoner, brought him to justice, and none of it had been enough to save Rebecca Torres. The funeral was held the following week. Denise attended standing in the back of the church watching as hundreds of people mourned a woman whose life had been stolen. Daniel Morrison delivered the eulogy. His voice broke repeatedly, but he pushed through. Rebecca believed that science could make the world better. She dedicated her life to that belief. She died because someone saw her brilliance as a threat instead of a gift. He looked directly at Denise. Dr. Carter caught the man who killed her. She found the truth when no one else could. Rebecca would have wanted that. She always wanted the truth no matter how painful. After the service, Morrison approached Denise outside the church. Thank you for finding out what happened. I wish I could have done more. You did everything possible. I know that. He wiped his eye. She admired you, you know. Read about the Sterling case when she was an undergraduate. Said you were proof that truth could win against power. Denise felt tears threatening. She sounds like someone I would have liked to know. She would have liked knowing you. Morrison extended his hand. Don't stop. What you do matters, even when it doesn't feel like it. Denise shook his hand, unable to speak. She walked away from the church, carrying the weight of a life she couldn't save. Harold Finch was convicted of first-degree murder 3 months later. The trial revealed the full extent of his crimes. He'd obtained the polonium through black market contacts in Eastern Europe, paying $50,000 for enough radioactive material to kill a dozen people. He'd chosen polonium specifically because it was nearly undetectable. Without Denise's intervention, Rebecca's death would have been ruled natural causes. Just another tragic case of a young person dying from an unknown illness. The judge sentenced him to life without parole. Dr. Finch, the judge said, you betrayed every principle of scientific ethics. You murdered a brilliant young woman to protect your fraudulent reputation. You used knowledge meant to heal as a weapon of destruction. You will spend the rest of your life contemplating that betrayal. Denise watched from the gallery as guards led Finch away. Justice had been served, but Rebecca was still dead. Some victories didn't feel like victories at all. In the months that followed Denise threw herself into work with renewed intensity. She expanded her team, developed new detection protocols, created training programs for medical professionals on recognizing poisoning symptoms. The Rebecca Torres case had exposed a gap in medical education. Doctors weren't trained to think about murder. They looked for disease because that's what they were taught to find. Denise set out to change that. She partnered with medical schools across the country developing curricula on forensic toxicology. She gave lectures at conferences, wrote papers for journals, trained a generation of doctors to see patterns that their predecessors had missed. Poison doesn't announce itself, she told a packed auditorium at Johns Hopkins. It disguises itself as disease. It hides behind symptoms that look ordinary. The only way to catch it is to question everything, to ask not just what is causing this, but who might be causing this. She showed slides from her cases. Sterling, Chen, the Russian diplomat, Rebecca Torres. These are the faces of people who almost died because no one thought to look for murder. Some of them survived, some didn't. The difference in every case was whether someone was paying attention. She clicked to a final slide, her own face from the hospital ID badge she'd worn as a housekeeper 20 years ago. I started my career mopping floors. I noticed things because no one was watching me. I saw patterns because I had nothing else to do while I cleaned. That perspective, the perspective of someone on the margins, taught me more about observation than any degree ever could. The audience was silent, captivated. You don't have to be invisible to see like an invisible person sees. You just have to remember that the most important details are often the ones that seem least important. The yellow fingernails, the unusual smell, the gift that arrives too regularly. She paused, letting the words sink in. Pay attention, question everything, and never assume that what you're seeing is the whole story. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Victor Sterling died peacefully in his sleep at age 82, 15 years after Denise saved his life. She learned about it from his attorney, who called to inform her that Sterling had left her a substantial bequest in his will. He said you gave him 15 extra years, the attorney explained. He wanted to make sure you knew how much those years meant. The bequest was $10 million designated for the Denise Carter Foundation for Forensic Science. She'd never heard of any such foundation. He established it in your name 5 years ago, the attorney continued. It funds scholarships for students from disadvantaged backgrounds who want to pursue careers in forensic toxicology, particularly students who had their education interrupted by life circumstances. Denise sat in her office phone, pressed to her ear, tears streaming down her face. Sterling had been preparing this for years, building a legacy that honored her journey, ensuring that others like her would have the opportunities she'd almost lost. There's one more thing, the attorney said. He left a personal letter. I'm sending it now. The letter arrived in her email moments later. She opened it with trembling hand. Dear Denise, if you're reading this, I've finally run out of time. But thanks to you, I had 15 years more than Marcus Webb intended. 15 years to watch my grandchildren grow, to see my company thrive, to make peace with mistakes I'd made. You gave me that gift by paying attention when no one else would, by trusting your knowledge when the experts dismissed you, by refusing to be invisible when the world wanted to ignore you. I've watched your career with pride and amazement. You've saved countless lives, caught killers who would have escaped justice, changed how the medical profession thinks about poisoning. But more than that, you've proven something important. You've proven that brilliance doesn't come from credentials or titles or money. It comes from the willingness to see what others miss, to question what others accept, to fight when others give up. The foundation in your name will ensure that others get the chances you almost didn't get. Every scholarship it awards is a statement that intelligence lives everywhere, not just in privileged places. Thank you, Denise, for seeing me, for saving me, for becoming everything you were meant to be. With eternal gratitude, Victor Sterling. Denise read the letter 3 times before she could stop crying. 15 years ago, she'd been a housekeeper who noticed yellow fingernails. Now she was a legend who had changed the world, and it had started with one simple choice to see what others couldn't. The years continued to pass. Denise trained hundreds of forensic specialists, solved dozens of impossible cases, built an institution that would outlive her. Her children flourished. Marcus became a basketball coach, then a school principal, then a superintendent. Jasmine founded a nonprofit that helped families of crime victims navigate the justice system. Both credited their mother with teaching them to pay attention, to question assumptions, to never accept that some people are invisible. On her 60th birthday, Denise was honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award from the American Academy of Forensic Sciences. The ceremony was held at Columbia University in the same auditorium where she'd received her doctorate 2 decades earlier. Dr. Jennifer Park gave the introduction. Denise Carter has been called many things over her remarkable career. Pioneer, genius, hero. But I want to talk about what she was before all of that. She was a housekeeper, a single mother, a woman who society had written off. Park paused, emotion crossing her face. I was one of the doctors who almost missed Victor Sterling's poisoning. I watched Denise walk into that room full of specialists and tell us what we'd been too blind to see. In that moment, I learned something that changed my entire career. I learned that expertise isn't about where you studied or what degrees you hold. It's about whether you're willing to see what's actually in front of you. The audience applauded. Denise Carter sees what others miss. She always has. Not because she's smarter than everyone else, though she is, but because she learned to observe from the margins. She learned that invisible people see invisible things, and she never forgot that lesson even when the world finally decided to see her. Park turned to face Denise, who sat in the front row. The field of forensic toxicology exists in its current form because of you. The lives you've saved, the killers you've caught, the students you've trained. They're your legacy. They'll continue long after we're all gone. Park raised her glass. To Dr. Denise Carter, who proved that brilliance has no prerequisites. That truth can defeat power. That one person paying attention can change the world. The room rose in a standing ovation. Denise walked to the podium, overwhelmed by the response. She looked out at the faces before her colleagues. students, family, friends. "Thank you," she began, her voice steady despite the emotion. "But I want to be clear about something. I'm not a genius, I'm not special, I'm a woman who refused to accept that my knowledge didn't matter because I didn't have the right title." She paused, gathering her thoughts. 20 years ago, I was mopping floors in a hospital while a billionaire died 10 feet away. I noticed something the doctors missed. Not because I was smarter than them, but because I was looking while they were assuming. That's the real lesson of my career. Not that I was exceptional, but that the exceptional exists in places we're trained not to look. In the housekeeper who reads chemistry journals during lunch breaks. In the nurse who notices patterns that doctors dismiss. In the security guard who observes behavior that others ignore. She looked at her children sitting in the second row. My kids grew up watching me study after midnight, memorize textbooks while making breakfast, pursue knowledge without any guarantee it would ever matter. They learned that education isn't something that happens in classrooms. It's something that happens whenever someone refuses to stop asking questions. She looked at Dr. Park, at Agent Martinez, at all the colleagues who had become family. I was lucky. I got a second chance. Victor Sterling's money gave me the opportunity to finish what I'd started. But most people like me don't get that lucky. They spend their entire lives knowing things that the world refuses to acknowledge. Seeing things that the world refuses to see. Her voice hardened with conviction. That's why this award matters. Not because it honors me, but because it honors the idea that expertise isn't defined by credentials. It's defined by observation, by persistence, by the refusal to be invisible. She raised her glass. To everyone who sees what others miss. To everyone who knows things they can't prove. To everyone who refuses to accept that their perspective doesn't matter. She drank. You matter. Your knowledge matters. And someday, if you keep paying attention, the world will have no choice but to see you. The applause was deafening. Later that night, after the ceremony, after the congratulations, after the photographs and interviews, Denise stood alone on the steps of Columbia University. The same steps she'd walked as a frightened dropout 20 years ago. The same steps she'd climbed as a returning student 15 years ago. The same steps as she'd crossed as a doctoral candidate 10 years ago. Now she stood here as a legend, a pioneer, a woman who had changed the world. But inside, she was still the same person, still the observer, still the invisible woman who had learned to see while no one was watching. Her phone buzzed. Text from Director Phillips. New case, multiple victims. Symptoms don't match any known poison. Need your eyes. Denise smiled. 60 years old. Lifetime Achievement Award in her pocket. More than enough accomplishments to justify retirement. But somewhere out there, someone was dying. Someone was being poisoned. Someone needed the truth that only she could find. She typed back, "Send me the files. I'll take a look." Because that's what she did. That's who she was. That's who she would always be. The woman who saw what others missed. The housekeeper who became a legend. The invisible woman who changed the world. And she wasn't done yet, Doctor. Denise Carter walked down the steps of Columbia University, phone in hand, and mind already working on the new case. Behind her, the building where she'd studied glowed in the evening light. Before her, another mystery waited to be solved. Another life waited to be saved. Another truth waited to be revealed. She had started with nothing but determination and the ability to observe. She had built an empire of justice on the foundation of paying attention, and she had proven beyond any doubt that the most powerful force in the world isn't money or credentials or connections. It's the courage to see what others refuse to see, to speak when others stay silent, to fight when others give up. Denise Carter had been invisible once. She would never be invisible again, and neither would anyone who followed in her footsteps. That was her legacy. That was her truth. That was her story. And it was complete.